Hello, everyone, and welcome to Movie Changeup, the Impossible Movie Remake Show. We have an exciting podcast for you today as we venture into forgotten movies once again, but it's a little different today because we're doing kind of failed movies that were all based on pretty famous TV shows. So we have an exciting match. It's going to be Joe versus our very festive-looking Tristan down in the corner with his, I don't even know what shades those are. But yeah, so if you're new to the podcast, welcome. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back. Please like and subscribe on YouTube and give us a 5-star review on any of your favorite podcast apps. That helps us out. But going into it today, I will be your host, Johnny Doop. I will let my co-judge introduce himself before we get into more of the details.
Well, I'm Bobby, coming off of I'm getting ready for our championship match. So I've been a little distracted, going against Johnny later on in a couple of weeks. But I'm definitely excited for this. Movies based on TV shows can always be interesting because I feel like they either go terribly wrong or are like pretty entertaining, like fun kind of blockbuster movies for the most part. So I'd like to see your takes on some of these that failed. And I'm looking forward to it. I think we have some fun rules today.
Yeah, I'm excited, and we'll introduce those the 7 movies we're doing in the 7 rules once we introduce our competitors. So first of all, we're starting with the Man in the Toon Squad shirt, and I guess him and Tristan got the memo that they had to wear some type of birthday related gear because it looks like Joe's got a hat on or something.
There's
in the
a reason
back.
for it.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah, so if you don't know, tomorrow is the official 1-year birthday of the Movie Changeup podcast. It was when we put up our first ever official episode where it was me versus Johnny, and we brought Bobby in as a judge. So yeah, the July 15th was the upload of the first official episode of the podcast. So I got like a little 1-year birthday hat on. It's a pretty good week for me because we got birthday of the podcast, and I'm also wearing a Toon Squad jersey because it's a week I've been waiting for a long time with Space Jam 2 and New Legacy dropping on Friday. So just a whole lot of greatness happening in my life.
I don't think I ever knew the full title. I thought it was just called Space Jam 2. Yeah. I didn't know that it was.
I don't even think there's a 2. I think it's just Space Jam and New Legacy.
Yeah. All right. Well, that being said, it's also my fiance's birthday in 2 days. So we're celebrating many birthdays around here. So getting to it, we'll go to our man in the glasses down there. Introduce yourself today, Tristan, and how do you feel going into forgotten movies again?
Look, I'm feeling pretty good. Bobby mentioned that sometimes TV shows turn into movies are good and sometimes they're bad. You're going to see that today. You're going to see a lot of good ones from one side of the aisle, a lot of bad ones from the other side. I'm here to give some great pitches. I'm pretty confident in what I got here. I do know I've been on a bit of a losing streak recently, but I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day. I want to spread my wings and fly away. So let's go. I'm going to win this, Joe. Get ready to lose. You're going to lose here, and Space Jam 2 is going to suck. So it's going to be a bad week for you, Joe.
All right, and one thing I do want to promote is me and Tristan are going to, and I guess either one of you that want to join Friday night are going to be doing a live watch along of Space Jam: A New Legacy. We're both going to be watching it for the first time and commenting live on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Movie Changeup.
Wow, very exciting.
Yeah.
So, we're both on opposing sides of that movie too, so it should be a fun viewing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be contentious. I like it. All right. That'll be a little. Today will be a preview to that as these two go head to head. Our contestants will have 7 movies and 7 rules. They have to use 1 rule per movie, and you can't use the same rule more than once. So, that being said, we'll get into it. Our first forgotten movie based on a TV show today, we're doing Gilligan's Island, which the film was released in 1996. Dexter's Laboratory, which was released in 2010. Quantum Leap, Time Jump, which was released in 2000. M.A.N.T.I.S, which was released in 2009. Hogan's Heroes, which was released in 1976. Alias, that was released in 2007. and Smiley's People, which was released in 1986. Obviously, those shows ran different years, but those are the movies that we're basing these off of. And Bobby, do you have our 7 rules that our combatants must use today?
I do. We have: one must feature a cameo from an original cast member. One must be a short film. One must cross over with another franchise. One must have a cast comprised of stand-up comics. One must be a horror movie. One must be a rom-com, kind of the opposite of that. And one must feature a cast of all women.
All righty. Bobby's saying rom-coms can't also be horror movies, and I disagree.
Gone Girl? I don't know. That's not really a rom-com.
I don't know. I've seen there's a thing about Mary, and the balls getting zipped up is pretty horrifying. So I believe Tristan won our little contest before the show started, so he's choosing what movie we're doing first. Tristan, where are we starting with?
Let's start with something that's kind of the classic from my childhood. We're going to go with Dexter's Laboratory, or should I say Laboratory, to be in
Dexter's Laboratory. Yep. All right, Dexter's Laboratory. People might not remember this, but the movie was released in 2010. It got a 22% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was directed by Raja Gosnell. The live-action version of Dexter's Laboratory was hated so much in early screenings that it was shelved for 5 years and released straight to DVD. The only reason the film is remembered by some people is that before streaming, it was the largest budgeted straight-to-video release of all time. So this was meant to be a large budget release around 2005. It got panned in pre-screenings, and they released it after a shelf for a few years, so people really didn't see it. But they put a lot of money into it, and it was a pretty big bomb. So Tristan, you said you're going first, or Joe's going first?
I'll go first on this one.
All right. Well, what do you got for us for a better version of Dexter's Laboratory?
So for Dexter's Laboratory, I decided to make my movie an animated movie, and I also had it cross over with a different franchise. I'll mention that my director is Michael Rianda, who just did Mitchell vs. the Machines, which is possibly the best movie of the whole year 2020, definitely the best animated movie so far. And the franchise I crossed it over with is Scooby-Doo. We'll get into that a little bit when I get into my pitch. But Dexter is kind of preparing for a science lab and a science fair, and he's working late in his lab. He has a really kind of big high-stakes experiment going on. He has his rival Mandark that we know from the show is also in the science fair, so Dexter's kind of stressed to make this the best possible experiment he can do. But the experiment goes wrong. He pours his chemicals in too much when he's too tired late at night, and there's kind of a big explosion of smoke and dust, and he creates a ghost in his lab. So the Scooby Gang is enlisted to help solve the mystery of the haunted laboratory, and they kind of come into the world of Dexter's lab and interact with a lot of the characters. I think the comedy dynamics of this would be really interesting. You have sort of like the forever skeptic and the very science-oriented Dexter, and he's contrasting with the Scooby Gang, who's had these kind of bizarre experiences. But they do kind of mention like, oh yeah, there's always someone behind it. It's always a practical experience. And Thelma has like a quip line of saying, oh, except for the time there were zombies, implying like, oh, the one time they went to Zombie Island is there. But all of these new Scooby-Doo stuff where it's like really ridiculous and huge and big, like the new movies, are not part of this kind of story here. I think it would be fun to see Dexter interact with Thelma, because Thelma has that really science techie kind of mind, and I think they can get into like the weeds of a lot of techno babble and talk about some really fun like science and lab kind of conversations that would be fun to see them have. And I also think Shaggy and Scooby would be fun with Dexter because they're such klutzes and they're always like knocking stuff over and not knowing what's going on. And Dexter, of course, is very protective of his lab. So with Scooby and Shaggy ever knock anything over, he's always upset about it. And I also wanted to add in some family bonding because I think Mitchell vs. the Machines, what was really interesting was the family dynamic of that. You really had like a family coming together in this story. So I wanted, since Dexter's out of his lab and he isn't normally out of his lab for this long, he's having a chance to kind of connect with Dee Dee, connect with his mom and dad a little bit more than he normally does. So you're seeing that Dexter family also come together too a bit. And of course, you still get the investigation. Scooby-Doo and the gang are trying to investigate this lab, and they're seeing some mysterious occurrences. They're not quite sure that it's a ghost, and they're trying to come up with some kind of rational explanation for it. And in the end, the ghost is Mandark, Dexter's rival. He did this to try and keep Dexter out of his lab the couple of days before the science fair, so that Mandark could upshow Dexter and kind of become the biggest scientist of the whole area, which is his kind of goal throughout the show. He wants to prove himself as the ultimate genius, but of course he gets caught And Dexter's learned a bit of a lesson himself. He's learned to value his family a bit more. He didn't spend much time with them beforehand, but now he's kind of seen a bit more of what they can mean to him and what they can do for him. And that's my story. You get the bonding of Dexter and his family a little bit, but you also get a lot of time with Dexter and the Scooby Gang solving a mystery within the lab. And like classic Scooby-Doo stories, there's always a rational explanation. So turns out it was just Man Dark the whole time. And that's my pitch for Dexter's Lab.
All right. During that, I'm not sure if Bobby was frozen or just had the same look on his face throughout the whole thing. I was trying to see if he was moving, and I didn't see him moving, so I can't tell. But
listening intently, so I couldn't tell you.
I like the classic Cartoon Network crossover there. And yeah, Mitchell's versus the Machines is definitely my favorite, my personal favorite movie of the year. So Joe, what do you got to combat with Tristan's version of Dexter's Laboratory?
All right, so my director is going to be Seth MacFarlane, who obviously you know from like Family Guy, and he's also done sci-fi stuff like The Orville, and then I also brought in the classic voices for Dexter and Dee Dee, but I wanted to include some of the other characters from outside of like the main Dexter cast. Basically, the Justice Friends. You have Val Hallen, who's essentially like Thor meets a rock star, and he's going to be voiced by Jack Black. You also have Major Glory, who's essentially Superman meets Captain America, voiced by John Cena, and then the Infraggable Krunk, who is essentially the Hulk but purple, going to be voiced by Vin Diesel. And I also am making mine a short film. So one thing I say is when animated shows change animation styles, it never looks good. So I would essentially just keep the same animation style, but just do it like in 4K and like HD, and just make it look clean and make it look good. And for my plot, Dexter is working on a machine he needs help with, so he decides the best course of action is to pull a bunch of Dexters from the multiverse into his lab to help him. He pulls a hair from his comb to get the needed DNA for his multiverse machine so it can find the other Dexters. What he didn't know was his annoying sister Dee Dee used his comb earlier that day, and he grabbed her hair, and now his lab is populated with dozens of alternate universe Dee Dees. There are old Dee Dees, middle-aged Dee Dees, baby Dee Dees, male Dee Dees, cave woman Dee Dees, robot Dee Dees, and Dexter realizes he has to send them all back to their original universes before his parents find out and wreck his lab. After struggling a while, he calls on the Justice Friends to help him fight the Dee Dees and send them back. And that's kind of the main plot, is them all working together to send the Dee Dees back to the machine. And I said I think this could be a really cool and fun 30 to 40 minute short for HBO Max, where Dexter's Lab currently streams. And because of the fact that the episodes were kind of always split into 2 or even 3 parts, a short would still be longer than any story you got from an actual episode. And that's my pitch. Oh, one thing I do want to add is one of the reasons I picked Seth MacFarlane is he wrote 4 episodes of the original show. And I feel like with his sci-fi work on The Orville and some of the sci-fi stuff he'll include in episodes of Family Guy, I think he'd be a good fit. And then that's all I have.
As Bobby said in the comments, you are lucky he is the deciding judge on this one.
I like Seth MacFarlane quite a bit more than Johnny. Well, actually, like Seth MacFarlane, actually.
Yeah.
So.
Well, not hard to do. All right. So that being said, so Tristan started, so we're gonna give him a minute on the clock.
Do you guys have questions or?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple. I don't know if Johnny.
Yeah. Bobby, ask your question. I'll see if I got anything.
My only one for Tristan is what because Joe described his animation style as being like a 4K version of the original. What is yours going to be? Is it going to be a little bit more modern 3D, or is it 2D? What's the visual style?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go back to the 2D style. I think you've seen a lot of 3D animation in movies and stuff, and I think people are kind of ready to get like a throwback stuff, especially if you're going to this 90s kind of throwback show. You want it to kind of feel a bit like a throwback. You know, it is a 2D animation, but the quality I definitely think is a lot higher. You know, it's going to be still like a 1080p high quality animation.
Okay, and then for Joe, you may have said it, I might have missed it, but with Seth MacFarlane doing this, and you said he wrote a lot on the original show, but is he going to bring his more kind of R-rated humor to it?
No, I feel like it's more just going to be more like the classic kind of the similar tone of the original show, because he's shown with things like The Orville and other things that it doesn't necessarily have to be like this R-rated comedy, and he can do more like PG-rated stuff.
All right. That's all I had.
My one question is for Tristan, because he mentioned obviously one of the strong points of Mitchell's versus the Machines is the family dynamic, and he's going to kind of delve into that in his version of Dexter's Lab. But because you kind of talked about Dexter interacting with like Scooby and Shaggy and with Velma, but
Mm-hmm.
how are the characters going to interact with Dee Dee? Are we going to get a scene? Are we going to get like Dee Dee kind of teaming up with Scooby and Shaggy because they're kind of like the clumsy, like goofballs, or are you not really going to get into like the family dynamics with the Scooby gang?
Oh yeah, I definitely had Dee Dee be a part of the story. I add in my paragraphs here that she goes out with Daphne because I think that's kind of a contrast. They're very different. They're similar like types of people, but their personalities and everything about them is very kind of different. So I think they'd be a fun pairing to be together, and they're sort of like as the damsel in distress a bit throughout the story. But I think that'd be like a fun bonding of Daphne and Dee Dee, and Daphne can kind of even comfort Dee Dee a bit because Dee Dee is much younger than her, and Daphne can be like this role model a bit for her to look up to and be like, hey, it gets a bit better when you're out of school, that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, then I think that answers the only question I really had there. So Tristan, you get a minute on the clock. Bobby, you have a timer.
I
Ready?
do.
All right, cool. Then
Yep, I got
Tristan,
it
you get
ready.
a minute. Talk about why your movie is better than Joe's.
Well,
Yep,
for
I'll
one,
start whenever.
I'm not going
There
to
you
go
go.
too much on the Seth MacFarlane, but I do think as a writer he's solid, but as a director he hasn't really shown anything that really like blew me away or even was very good. Like a lot of his directed movies are pretty bad, so I don't necessarily think giving him a direction role is what I would do. And I also think that mine works because it is that crossover. It's not just like, oh, here's Dexter's Lab for a few minutes. It's like you're actually getting Scooby Doo and Dexter's Lab, two things that are kind of lost to culture. And you've seen Scooby Doo that's gotten like
30 seconds.
Scooby Doo's gotten kind of grounded up into this. Like the last Scooby movie was pretty bad, so I want to bring a chance to not just do Dexter's Lab right, but do Scooby Doo right, and give both of those characters and both of those shows a chance to shine in 2021 and come back into the forefront.
Okay, you got 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Joe sucks. So go ahead.
Good use
All
of good use of the 10
All
seconds.
done. You're done then. Okay.
All right,
All
Joe.
right,
Whenever
Joe,
Bobby's
minute,
ready.
whenever you start talking.
All right, so my main thing against Tristan's is I feel like the comedy doesn't really line up. Like I still can't picture in my head kind of because basically in the show Dexter's just like this kind of douchebag like character, like him and all the characters in that world, like Dexter, Man, Dark, Dee Dee, are just like all these weird, annoying characters, and um, Scooby Doo is a lot more like chill and relaxed and laid back, and I just don't know if like yeah, they're different and sometimes opposites go together, but I just don't think those two like styles really go together well at all. I just can't see them interacting. And as far as
30 seconds.
and that's my main big negative against him or against his. And I feel like part of the problem is it's like too old school. It's two properties that aren't really popular anymore. One of the things I included the Justice Friends in mine is because you can do there's because of the MCU and other things, there's a lot more jokes you can include in the area of the multiverse and other things that are popular and happening now that you can reference and that you can talk about that you couldn't before.
All right, time is up. Okay. So now 2 minutes. Johnny, you're muted still, but you guys get 2 minutes. Tristan, you start. And whenever you start talking to rebut or bring up new points, whatever you want to do, go ahead.
All right. So my first point I'm going to address is the comedy aspect. You said that these are very different characters that you wouldn't see interacting, and I think that is kind of the point. Like I put them together because they're opposites. And you mentioned that Scooby Gang is much more chill and not like these douchey, arrogant characters. And I think the Scooby Gang is, but the characters they meet, like each episode they meet new characters in these towns they go to, and those people aren't chill. Those people are kind of the douches. Those people are kind of people who go through the arcs and make the changes and kind of are the ones that the Scooby Gang, through their good nature, kind of inspires. So you mentioned that like Dee Dee and Dexter are kind of weird, almost douchey characters, and that's part of the story. I mentioned that they kind of grow and connect a bit more than they had in the show here. So it's a chance for them to readdress that douchiness of these characters a little bit and make them a bit more likable, a bit more growth to them. And you said that Scooby Doo is not popular, that Dexter's Lab's not popular. I think Scooby Doo is very popular. That movie that came out recently made a lot of money, and the show is there's still new shows coming out for this franchise. So
1
it's
minute.
not a dead IP at all, And yours is more superhero stuff, and I get that's popular, but I'd like to see something different and not just yet another like superhero multiverse joke for 20 minutes. I think that mine just gets the most out of Dexter's Lab and gets the most out of Scooby Doo because I think it has that kind of skeptical, douchey, anxiety like energy of Dexter's Lab episode, and it contrasts with like the chill, goofy vibes of a Scooby Doo episode. And I think the best crossover is two different things coming together rather than like two things that are very similar in the same vein that just kind of feel like more of the same. So I think bringing two different things together in a crossover is what makes a crossover very interesting. You look at like talk Nickelodeon, you had Jimmy Neutron and Fairly Odd Parents, not just different shows, but totally different animation styles, and they're still able to make that crossover work. So I think you talk about these things; these shows are different from each other. Like that's a bad thing, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's a positive for my movie that these are different characters and different vibes and different shows, and I think it would be a fun challenge to merge those tones together. And I think that our director can do it. And if he pulls it off, I think we'd have a really great movie that gets the most out of iconic characters from our childhoods, from the childhoods of our parents, from a lot of different generations kind of coming together.
Okay. All good. All right, Joe, whenever you start talking.
All right. Well, first off, you said Scoob made a lot of money. It made $26.4 million. I understand it was in the middle of a pandemic, but Tom and Jerry made $124 million, almost 5 times as much. So I wouldn't use that as a movie as an example that people still care about that franchise. As far as your point against the opposites, I feel like, yes, opposites can, go together and work together and make something better. I just feel like your movie almost feels more like a Scooby-Doo movie, like from how you pitched it, where it's like, oh, they go and they meet these people and those people change, where it's a Dexter's Laboratory, and your movie still feels like, oh, like the shitty people that they go and see are supposed to now be the main characters, and I don't know if that necessarily fits. With my movie, I feel like comedy and style, and it's also shorter. Like I tried watching Dexter's Lab, and I don't know if like that whole thing could sustain a full movie. You even look at like the animated Scoob movies. Like I don't know how great those really are. I don't know if that can really hold like a full attention movie, and that's why I personally went
1 minute
for a short with mine, because it's 30 to 40 minutes. You watch it, you enjoy it, it's over. I feel like it's a nice plot that goes well with Dexter's Laboratory and goes to the base of what Dexter's Laboratory, of like him and his sister. And I don't know if ghosts and all that necessarily go into what I would expect from a Dexter's Lab. I also don't really understand the plot of Mandark pretends to be a ghost, and that's somehow supposed to make Dexter be a bad scientist. Doesn't really fully make sense to me either. And that's all I got.
Okay.
All right. Okay, Bobby, you're making the final call, so I'll kind of just put my thoughts out there. I loved Mitchell's versus the Machines, but I don't necessarily see the fit with Tristan's pitch all the way, especially talking about the animation style being closer to like the Dexter's Lab, because I think the animation style of Mitchell's versus the Machines was one of the really strong elements of it. But overall, if I'm scrolling through, Disney Plus or Netflix or anything, and it has these two movies on it, and one is a short film and one is a full movie with the Scooby-Doo, I think it was smart to incorporate another franchise into it. And I wouldn't necessarily think that a short film, like it just seems like, I mean, Seth MacFarlane, I understand the pick more after Joe explained that he helped work on the original show, but it just seems like an extended episode of the show. I don't think it's necessarily smart to take an animated show and just do a short film with it. I'm not as into that as like a full movie incorporating the Scooby-Doo gang. I think that's an interesting concept. I think those characters do go well together because they contrast so much that I think it would make interesting pairings. I'd like to see Dee Dee interact with Scooby and Shaggy. I think that could be really funny. I'd like to see Dexter interact with Velma. So I think, just me personally, I'd be more into Tristan's pick, but I wasn't 100% sold on either one.
Yeah, I was very similar. Like there was a lot of elements of Tristan's that I loved, and there were a couple that didn't quite come together for me, including kind of how it all resolved with Mandark being like pretending to be a ghost. But I think Joe, with an animated kind of thing to make that a short film, I don't know if I love that decision. Like it's not bad, but the Seth MacFarlane fit too to go along with that. I think because I actually do like Seth MacFarlane quite a bit, and I like his more raunchy styled humor. I think it's kind of a waste to put him into something that on an animated level that's kind of a little bit more like a throwback kind of basic thing without adding his kind of touches to it. but overall, I think the crossover Scooby Doo sounds like a lot of fun. It just that called to me more than seeing like just a short version of Dexter's Lab, like a shortened movie. So I'm gonna give it to Tristan, but it was pretty close for me. It wasn't like a runaway. It was definitely closer than it was for Johnny.
Yeah, well, Joe made it closer than I would have originally thought when as soon as he said Seth MacFarlane. I think he did a good job kind of explaining what it would be. But yeah, I agree. I think if you're gonna do it nowadays, after MacFarlane has a more established career, I think you should have gone more adult humor type Dexter with it, and it would have made it stand out at least to like. Then I could have seen it for fans of Seth MacFarlane. It'll stand out.
Yeah.
Right, so, and of course didn't know Tristan's pitch, but it would have separated the two style wise and like humor just to be a little bit more. But I am disappointed none of you brought up the Robo Dexo 2000, which is his big giant fighting robot, because that would have been fun to add into the movie. But
hey, you guys should have crossed it over with Real Steel. Can't believe missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Wait, next time.
You'll never guess what franchise I cross over my movie into. I'll say that when I get to that point.
We're about to get a Real Steel crossover. You spoiled it, Johnny.
Yeah.
Real Steel versus M.A.N.T.I.S. All right. So that being said, Joe, you're down 0-1. So what are we going next? You need a bounce back here.
I'll guess. I have some riskier ones, but I'm gonna decide to go with a safer one, and I'm gonna go with Smiley's People, and I'll go first.
Okay. Smiley's People. Joe texted in our group chat. He wonders who picked this, and after my very long description of the other John le Carre novel, The Constant Gardener, I thought it would be pretty obvious who chose this one. So I'm interested to see which direction Joe went with it. Smiley's People came out in 1986. It got a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was directed by the great Irvin Kershner. It was released just a few years after the successful Alec Guinness-led miniseries on TV, and the film did not quite find the same magic. Audiences and critics alike found the film a redundant mess, and I would agree. If you've seen the film compared to the short series, there's no comparison. But I love a good spy thriller, so I'm excited to see what you guys have for us. Joe, you said you're going first, so let's see what you did with this film.
All right, so I'll do my director, and then I'll give my pitch, and then I'll give my cast to kind of wrap it up. So my director is Anton Corbijn. He directed A Most Wanted Man and The American, two both well-received slow burn kind of spy thrillers. So that's my direction. One of the things too, I watched a little bit of the series, and I watched a little bit of, I read the description of the book, and I just think overall, both of those two things, they're just too dense to fit into one movie. So I kind of just took the general concept of the book and the show and the movie and kind of just did my own thing of like a spy kind of having to go against his, former rival kind of a thing, with a similar kind of tone. So this is my plot. Vladimir, a Russian general and spy, is in a hotel room gathering his things as quickly as possible when he is ambushed and killed. That night, George Smiley, a retired British intelligence officer during the Cold War, is contacted about Vladimir's death. And I forgot to say that this movie is set in present day. It is revealed that Vladimir was a double agent during the Cold War and worked for Smiley. When weeks go by with no news on his old friend, Smiley decides to figure out what happened to Vladimir. Smiley, who now works as a tailor, slowly goes back into his old life. He is reaching out to his old contacts, seeing what they know, and no one is talking. However, one day in the mail, Smiley gets an unmarked letter with a note inside that just reads Carla, spelled K-A-R-L-A. We learn Carla was Smiley's arch-rival during the Cold War who was a Russian spy. In the slow burn thriller, we learn that Carla has moved on to human trafficking since his Cold War days, and that Vladimir was trying to catch him and stop him, and that is why he was killed. Smiley, deciding to finish what his friend started, decides to trap his old nemesis. Using his contacts, he poses as a buyer and arranges for a meeting. There is a final confrontation between the two old spies, with monologues between them. The movie ends with Smiley shooting Carla in an alley and walking off into the sunset back to his normal life. And for my cast, for the role of Smiley, I went with Pierce Brosnan. For the role of Vladimir, I went with Dolph Lundgren. And then for my rule of one must feature a cameo from an original cast member, because Carla doesn't really pop in until the very end in the original show. It's 6 episodes and he doesn't go until the final episode. I used it for that rule. And for the role of Carla, I went with Alan Rickman, who appeared in the original series. And that is my pitch.
Okay. Yeah, and I think we forgot to mention with the rule for the original cast member, because some of these shows are old. We can use, that doesn't matter if the actor's still living or not. So definitely want to see something else with Alan Rickman. It's a good choice.
Yeah. All right. So that's an interesting direction to go with it. A little different from the original story, but you kind of kept a lot of the qualities of the classic John le Carré book. So I like that. So Tristan, what did you do with Smiley's People?
So for my Smiley's People, I mentioned my director up top was Guy Ritchie. He just did Wrath of Man, which I think is like a big comeback vehicle for him. So I'm really excited to see what he does next. And I think a thriller kind of spy action movie would be the perfect fit for him. Now I use the same rule as Joe. I did a cameo from the original series, but I used a different actor. I'll get to it as I go along here. But my cast for Smiley is Denzel Washington. I think he could play a good, he's a big name action star who's a little bit towards the end of his career a bit, so I could see him playing this kind of coming back to his old spy route, similar to Alec Guinness in the original. And he's a retired spy who's brought back to the fold when his previous partner is suddenly murdered unexpectedly. And they think it might be tied to their work together, so all of a sudden he's in danger, and he's kind of thrust back into the spy game here. He has to rely on his old relationships, as well as facing a changing generation of spycraft. Mine's also set in the modern times, and I wanted to get that conflict of new technology compared to Denzel Washington, who's used to older technology, and there's this new idea of tracking on your phone, of drones, of cameras everywhere, that kind of stuff. I wanted to get an element of the conflict of new technology, something that they obviously couldn't have addressed in the original necessarily, and I think it's something that is really prominent in modern culture. I have him team up with a new spy who's kind of like the new blood of the operation, played by Michael B. Jordan. I think that would be a fun way to kind of being passing the torch almost between Denzel Washington and Michael B. Jordan, where Michael B. Jordan's this big up-and-coming name. Everybody knows him all of a sudden, and he's doing his directorial debut. He's like a huge name in Hollywood, and Denzel was that for a while, so I want to give this moment of Denzel and Michael B. Jordan together on screen as a bit of a passing of the torch here. And the leader of the circus, who's sort of the circus is the name of the group that he works for, the spy operation. Have him play by Patrick Stewart, who was a cameo from the original series. He played Carla in the original show. So I have a nice kind of subversion. He played the big bad guy in the original, so he's playing kind of the leader of the circus here in this one. And my version of Carla, who's the leader of this kind of rebel group, is played by, I gotta scroll up for it, Dave Bautista. I think he's once again on a cool hot streak of his career, so I think it could be a fun role for him to take on, lead into his strengths, but also give him a chance to get beyond just simply being the big brute guy, And I think that's kind of what I was going for, just this spy thriller, Michael B. Jordan, Denzel Washington, kind of side by side, uncovering the mystery of this. And we get sort of towards the end, there's a bit of a twist where the circus that he was working for, the people he's worked for his whole career, are not necessarily the bad guys, but they have a very insidious motivations. They don't want to. I think the best part of the spy thriller is they're not necessarily straight bad guys and good guys. There's all kinds of people on each side, and they're all kind of playing their own games. So I ended up making Patrick Stewart kind of in the end scene have this conversation with Denzel Washington where he tells him hey, look, we do what we got to do for us, and that's all it is. It's kind of what I want to go for. This Denzel Washington is coming back into the spy game, and he's realizing why he left in the first place. He's realizing, it's a selfish place where people are out for their own games. Nobody tells you everything that's going on. And in the end, it's dangerous for the spies. It was what put my partner in danger. He was put into a job that he wasn't prepared for, that he didn't know the full stakes of, and then he was sabotaged by Circus, by Patrick Stewart's character himself. So I think you kind of get this, who you trust isn't who you think you trust, and who is on your side isn't necessarily on your side. I think that's the kind of the fun of the spy thriller. Like I said, Denzel Washington and Michael B. Jordan would be a fun duo, and I really like to see them together in this kind of movie, and I'd like to see Guy Ritchie do it. So that's my pitch for Smiley's People.
Okay, interesting. Definitely two different directions with that. We have the Guy Ritchie kind of big fun spy thriller, and then the more kind of gritty, slow-paced, The Most Wanted Man style spy thriller with Joe's. So, Bobby, do you have any questions for them before they start their arguments?
I didn't really have any question on Joe's. I pretty much understood his pitch for Tristan, which is kind of funny with Guy Ritchie doing Man from U.N.C.L.E. already, another spy TV show that he turned into a movie. Is that going to be more in the tone of that movie with a little bit more fun into it, or is it going to be more of a straight up spy thriller?
It's much more serious. I think Wrath of Man was the inspiration because that was still somewhat of a big movie, but it was a lot more grounded than Guy Ritchie's been recently. So I want him to get a bit more towards that. He still has the fun scale to it, but a bit more groundedness, a bit more of a realism to it. So a bit of a merge between Man of U.N.C.L.E. and Wrath of Man was what I was going for, because those are the two movies I watched in preparation for this pitch.
Okay, so less jokey. All right, that's all I had.
All right, yeah. I don't necessarily think I have a question. My one question for Joe, because I did like your pitch a lot, but I think my one question is, because your film obviously is done by a director who gets a lot out of his actors. Do you think that Dolph Lundgren is the right choice for like a guy in like a serious, like dramatically acted kind of thriller?
My thing with that is Dolph Lundgren is really just kind of in the opening scene. He's the like because he's the one that gets killed in the opening scene, and he's the one that drives Pierce Brosnan like out of retirement. So he's not like throughout the whole movie. He's like in the basically the opening scene is he's like in his hotel room. You could tell he's in a hurry, and that's when he gets ambushed and killed. So, you know.
Okay.
So
So,
like
he's not in it much. So you're not asking a ton from him.
It's like the beginning of Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol, where like those spies get killed in like the opening scene.
Yeah,
and they're
basically.
not in the rest of the movie.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. All right. Well, then that being said, so Joe gave the first pitch, so he gets a minute on the clock when he starts talking. When Bobby's ready.
All right, tell me when you're ready. 'Cause I'm ready.
Whenever you start.
All right, so yeah, one of my main things against Tristan's is he kept using like action and like I understand Dave Bautista can be a dramatic role, but I feel like one of the things with like Smiley's People and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and those books and movies and shows is that it's like not really kind of an action franchise. It's more of like that slow burn kind of like realistic spy thing, and I like that that's what separates it from the other, you know, spy movies like Mission Impossible or Man from U.N.C.L.E. or all these other spy franchises. The like fact that it's kind of this more not as actiony as those, and I really like that. And another thing too is Smiley's People is very much like a super British franchise. Like George Smiley is a very iconic British character.
15 seconds.
I feel like casting Denzel Washington, it's like, to me, it's like casting, you know, like Shia LaBeouf as the next James Bond. It's like, you know, sure, he's a good actor and maybe he fits kind of the look, but it should be a British actor playing George Smiley, and that's why I went with Pierce Brosnan.
All right. Tristan, whenever you're ready.
Oh yeah, so for I'm gonna say that I changed it up. Like I cast Denzel Washington, I cast like Americanized actors in these roles because I want it to feel different. We've seen a lot of gritty, kind of grounded spy thrillers. You know, we got Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. We get those a lot. Like even The Courier that came out last year was a kind of a British spy thriller, and it was nothing. Like people don't really care about British spy thrillers that like in that way anymore. So I think adding an injection of action and an injection of fun without like overwhelming it with action, overwhelming it with ridiculousness, just a little bit of the Guy Ritchie edge to it would be what would make it kind of more enjoyable and more exciting for me to watch. And I think my casting I really like a lot. I think Michael B. Jordan and Denzel Washington would be a great dynamic between the two of them together. And sure, they're not British, but like they can fit the spy roles here. And Patrick Stewart's still in it. You know, I think that's kind of a cameo from the original. It carries over to the original without just being the same original over again. And it kind of feels like yours changes the story, but the whole movie kind of feels the same. And I kept the similar beats of the story, but I changed the feel, I changed the tone a bit, I changed the look.
All right. Cool. All right, so Joe, you get 2 minutes whenever you are ready.
All right, so yeah, like you said, you know, changed the look, you changed the tone, you changed the feel, you changed the storyline. Like at the end of the day, I feel like you just kind of took the title and were like, I'm making my own spy thing to a thing that's like not even, you know, a thing that Smiley's People fans would be interested in. And I think that's kind of the death of basically all reboots and remakes, is if like the fans of the original property don't like it, that usually kind of spreads to everybody else. We're sure, okay, I changed the plot, but I feel like you kind of have to, because I don't think there's any way that that plot of that book or original show could fit into a movie. So I think you're kind of forced to fit the plot, where I still kind of stuck with that tone. I kept it, British movie. It's, similar kind of themes and all of that. So I feel like that stuck, and I feel like people can still be into it. And I feel like slow burn movies still are popular. Like you said, they're not popular, but then you also are like, oh, we already have those with Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. We also have a lot of generic
1 minute
spy action movies, like The Equalizer and, all of these other ones that always come out. So I don't know, maybe we get a bunch of each, but I feel like mine will get less lost in the shuffle because of, my director's pedigree, where yours is more hit and miss when it comes to his films. That's all I got.
Okay. Well done. You have 30 seconds if you want this.
Yeah, I concede my 30 seconds.
Okay.
You mentioned that I just took Smiley's title and did my own thing, and that's like the opposite of what I did. Like, I have the exact same premise of Smiley's People, and I have like the same general plot piece of Smiley's People. I condensed it a lot, but it's still the similar idea of a retired spy coming back to the fold, having to uncover this mystery of his dead partner, and taking Michael B. Jordan kind of into it. I wanted to have that duel of the two generations to kind of make the change that a remake requires. Like, you want something to be different when you're remaking a movie, especially this many years later. So I have that idea of the two clashing generations, and you also have Guy Ritchie. I think would be a really exciting director to make this movie, because I think he's on the radar now once again. Like, Wrath of Man put him back on the radar, and now people are kind of looking forward to see what he would do next and what direction his career is going to go. And I think this is the exact direction for his career. I think it's something that people would be excited for, because he's back in their minds. It could be a nice comeback vehicle for the director. I think this is just a really interesting move for him. And I think
1 minute.
Like, yours is British, sure, but like that's the only thing you have similar to the original. Like, I guess his partner dies in that one too, but like, you talk about how you want to keep the original fans, but like, there's more than just having British people in the movie to make the original fans come through. Like, you want it to be the original premise kind of done in a slightly new, slightly modern way, but you also want to appeal to other people. I don't know what Smiley's People is, never heard of before, but I know who Guy Ritchie is, I know who Denzel Washington is, I know who Michael B. Jordan is. So I'd be there for this movie along with the fans, and mine appeals to both fans and new viewers. So I think that's exactly what this movie should be going for. It's an old show, an old book, so don't appeal to old fans, appeal to a lot of people, appeal to movie fans who want to see what Guy Ritchie does next, to Michael B. Jordan fans, Denzel Washington
15
fans.
seconds.
You cover the whole Met on my movie, so I think mine just sounds like a much more exciting, much more interesting movie that would be a headline-making kind of really big movie for the industry. And yours just feels like one that would come out and be one of the many spy thrillers that just gets forgotten by the end of the year.
All right.
Okay.
Well, those arguments were solid. Bobby, I'm making the final decision. I might need your help. What did you think of these pitches? What would you go with?
So this was pretty close for me, because I do like when Guy Ritchie does do kind of these spy thriller movies. But to me, it came down to more of a fit to Smiley's People and what I would kind of want to see, and like the tone that I would, it just sounded better, like more intriguing to me. And that was Joe's, the kind of the take he went, the more the tone, keeping the British style. I do like the slow burn kind of spy thriller over kind of a more big kind of Guy Ritchie for this, especially Guy Ritchie is best, I feel like, when he does work in the British setting. So making Guy Ritchie the director and then making it American, I feel like that fit for a British show is kind of odd. So it's close for me. I do like both pitches, but I'm leaning Joe.
Okay. Yeah. It's tough because I feel like kind of like the Seth MacFarlane thing on the last pitch. Like, as soon as Tristan said it was going to be Denzel Washington as George Smiley, I was like, I'm out. And then he fought, and I got his movie more, and I kind of liked it more as it went on. But I do think overall, I do agree with Bobby, where if I'm going to see, I think Tristan's would obviously make more money at the box office, but Joe's is the movie that I'd be more into, because I love Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I was super passionate about my pitch for The Constant Gardener because I like a good kind of slow burn political spy thriller. I would have really liked either pitch if like Ray Fiennes was your George Smiley. I don't necessarily love Pierce Brosnan in that role, but I do think he's a better fit than making it more Americanized, especially with Guy Ritchie. I think if Tristan wanted to go full on like Guy Ritchie, make it more exciting, make it way different than something we saw, and had Jason Statham's take on George Smiley and made it more of an action thriller, I think that would have been more of a fit.
Mm-hmm.
But his movie doesn't necessarily sound like kind of like the classic like British spy thriller that I'd be into if I'm going to see this. And I think that's basically kind of what it came down to. I think Joe's just he changed enough of the plot and updated it where it's not exactly the same as what we've seen before, but kept a lot of the same elements story wise and kind of the same tone. So I think that overall won me over with Joe's. But Tristan, I think I was really down on his, and he kind of sold me more on it as it went on. So it was closer than I thought it would originally be. But I think at the end of the day, got to go with Joe.
Yeah, I think when Tristan started, I'm like, oh, I got this in the bag. And then as he started talking, I'm like, okay, I may actually have to fight this one. And I will say the whole human trafficking thing, I always felt like, oh, this is kind of new and different, something I haven't seen like really touched on in a movie. And then I saw Black Widow, and then I was debating, should I change my plot or not? And then I was like, ah, fuck it, I'm going to just keep it.
Well, I'd like kind of a it kind of reminded me of like the Taken type angle, but instead of like a like an
Revenge
action movie,
thriller.
kind of that with more of a spy thing. So I kind of like those elements kind of interacting, and I like your director choice. I think that was a perfect director choice for the movie that you pitched. But I do think if you're going former James Bond for George Smiley, I think Timothy Dalton would have been.
Yeah,
I
was debating. Yeah. I was debating between
Yeah.
the two, and then because Alan Rickman turned down the role that Sean Bean got, I thought it was kind of cool to like eventually have them. Interact.
Yep.
All right. Well, that ties it up at 1-1. Tristan, you lost that one. What are you going with next?
All right. So my next pick is going to be Alias, the 2007 movie from the J.J. Abrams show.
All right, Alias. The film people might not remember as much as the show, but it came out in 2007. It got a 61% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it was fresh. But it was written and directed by Jennifer Gardner, the show's lead star. And the reason for this is there was very little backing from the studio, causing the film to be released as a TV special a year after the show was canceled. So the show, she wanted to really push a theatrical release for a movie and was super into it, and the studio was never behind it. And then it kind of just got forgotten about after the series ended. Alias was never a show that I was really into, so I'm interested to see your guys' pitches. I have much more history with Dexter's Lab, and I'm a big fan of Smiley's People, the book, and the old show, and John le Carré book. So I'm interested to see your pitches on something that I have almost no familiarity with. I've never even seen a second of the episode of this.
Our parents loved this show when it was on, and I watched quite a few episodes of it, Johnny, with them, and it was good. I just never watched the entire series, but it's a fun spy show.
All right. Well,
I watched the pilot. It was entertaining. I watched it like a week ago. So
perfect. So, Tristan, who did you say is going first?
I'll go first on this one.
All right, Tristan, you get a minute on the clock. Or no, just kidding. You're pitching.
Okay.
You get a minute to pitch. Go.
Minute to pitch. Yeah.
Tristan, tell us your Alias movie.
Look, it might have worked for this one because the rule I'm using is make one a short film.
There you go.
And my director is Carrie Sakaland, who just did Falcon and the Winter Soldier and really kind of broke out from that movie. So I think it could be a fun fit for this. I'm going for a spy action movie here, so we'll see how it goes. I want to make it a short film kind of in the same vein of like Punisher's Dirty Laundry or like the Uncharted movie with Nathan Fillion, where it's like you're getting a chance to kind of get back to the thing you love for like a one-off little thing, and maybe it takes off, maybe it doesn't, but here's a little chance to get the fans of the show a chance to see the characters again, because this is one of those shows that has like a cult following on the internet of people who are like, oh, we need more Alias, bring Alias back, it was so good. So I think this could be a way to tribute them while also making it a cool short film that could kind of put the show back on the map for the streaming services. So my cast here, I brought back Jennifer Gardner as Sydney for a smaller role in this episode or in this short film here. And my lead here is Daphne Keene. Obviously, you know her from Logan as the young daughter of Logan. She plays Isabel, who's the daughter of Jennifer Gardner's character Sydney. In the finale of the show, they kind of established she has this family and she's kind of moved with her family. And but they do establish that her daughter Isabel also has kind of a gift for spy craftery. So there's a bit of a cliffhanger at the end of the show, like, oh, is her daughter, her young daughter, going to be the next spy? So in my movie, I kind of took that premise up, and I ran with Daphne Keene being essentially the spy, and Jennifer Gardner being her kind of mom in the chair who's giving her direction and kind of telling her what to do and looking through the cameras, that kind of role. So we get the interactions. We can tell from the interactions in this opening scene that because Daphne Keene's character is taking down this child prostitute ring in the opening scene, so we get this in the interactions that like they've trained a lot, but this is her first time really on like a on the ground, feet to the ground mission by herself. So she's trying to kind of prove herself here. So she's trying to take down this child prostitute ring, and it doesn't quite go exactly well. She still saves them and still kind of catches the bad guy, but she makes a big mistake and almost loses. So she gets kind of reprimanded by her mom, saying, "I guess you weren't ready, and you gotta get home because we have parent-teacher conferences tonight." So they go, and the next sequence here is them at parent-teacher conferences. So you get that conflict of like the craft, and then also like the family drama, which is something that Alias as a show tried to lean into. So we have the parent-teacher conferences. I think that could be a really fun kind of comedic beat too, where you see these spies in this school setting trying to act like they're just a normal mom, a normal daughter, and the teacher's telling them like, "Oh, your daughter's kind of slacking off in class. She's not doesn't seem to be studying too well anymore. She's dropping on her grades." And Jennifer is, and then Sydney is kind of telling her daughter like, "Look, you gotta pay attention to school. This spy stuff is what we do on the side, but you still gotta graduate. You can't get eyes on us, that kind of stuff." And while she's at the parent-teacher conferences, she reunites with Bradley Cooper's character, a bit of a cameo from Bradley Cooper, who was a big character in the original show. And he's not working undercover, but he's kind of just at this teacher conference with his own kids. You know, he's there in the own setting as Jennifer Gardner's character is, and he kind of tips her off, saying, "Oh, I heard you kind of doing your own thing now, so I've heard about this human trafficking plot that's going on." And now we get the second chance for Isabel to kind of prove herself. So we get a final scene here of Isabel kind of on boots on the ground taking on this human trafficking plot. Her mom is very hesitant to let her go out, but she kind of talks her into it and says, "Look, I messed up last time. I know I did, but here's my chance to prove I'm doing it right." And they get the final takedown. She comes and takes on this human trafficking ring and takes them all down and kind of frees everyone. And then she goes home, has dinner with her parents, kind of a nice like family moment. And then we get a scene where Isabel is recruited by Bradley Cooper's character, and you don't quite know what her answer is going to be, but she's asked by Bradley Cooper to join the program and become a spy. And that's kind of a bit of a cliffhanger ending, so that if they wanted to continue this on as a new show or a new series of movies, they can go from there and have Daphne Keene be our lead and maybe Jennifer Gardner as like a side character. But that's my pitch for Alias.
Okay, so kind of a sequel short film. Kind of like it. Cool.
Kind of like a dark Enola Holmes. Joe, what do you got for us?
All right, so I'll start with my rule. My rule I used is one must feature a cast of all women. And one of the things, just to preface, like my idea is not like that they work for like an all-female spy agency or anything like that. It's just like this is, regular spy agency. It's just all the characters in our movie happen to be women. So my director is Catherine Bigelow. For the role of Sydney Bristow instead of Jennifer Gardner, I have Haley Steinfeld. And then, obviously, because of my rule, instead of her dad being a major portion of it, it would be her mom, Jackie Bristow, played by Catherine Zeta-Jones. And then for the role of Marcia Dixon, we have Viola Davis. And then for Carla Sloan, we have Jamie Lee Curtis. So I said after watching the pilot, one aspect of it really got my attention, and that was definitely like the father-daughter aspect. And so I kind of want to go in that direction, but more of like a mother-daughter thing because it's something we haven't really seen a whole lot, especially in like an action franchise. So in my movie, Sydney Bristow realizes the organization she works for, SD6, is not an arm but for the CIA, but is actually a target of it. And when she threatens SD6, she goes from one of their top operatives to their number one target, her mother, who she discovers is a high-ranking member of SD6, disavows the organization and goes on the run with their daughter to protect her. The movie focuses on the strained mother-daughter relationship of the leads as they learn who each other truly are while also being on the run. I said it's a little bit Logan, a little bit Thelma and Louise, and a little bit Mission Impossible. And that's my pitch.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Kind of like the a women version of the Die Hard movie with the Australian guy, Jack Courtney.
Great movie.
Women
Not-
version of the
But a little bit better people
I
behind the
had
scenes.
to get there. I don't know. One
Yeah, that was
Die Hard. Die Hard with this son. I don't know.
Live Free and
Mother
Die Hard, I
daughter.
think it was called.
No, that was
Yeah,
the.
it's Live Free or
okay,
Die.
wait.
Live Free or Die Hard.
Is it? Because I thought that was like the decent fourth one. A Good
No,
Day to Die
that's
Hard
the-
is the shitty. Is the one with the.
Yeah,
son.
Good Day to Die Hard
Oh.
is the
Oh,
Jack
okay.
Courtney one.
Oh, there's the names of that
Yeah, they're very
franchise are
difficult.
all they're almost as bad as the Fast and Furious
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah,
They
Die
might be
Hard.
worse.
Die Hard 2, Die
Yeah.
Harder.
A Good Day to Dupe.
Die Hard with a Vengeance. Yeah.
The best one.
Yeah.
That's the best one. All right. Bobby, do you have any questions for them?
Not really. I mean, I understand both of them. I guess for Tristan, because yours is a short film that could lead into a TV series, I guess, how does it differentiate itself from a pilot?
I didn't necessarily make this a pilot. I mentioned I wanted to connect to like the Uncharted short film and the Dirty Laundry short film, which aren't necessarily pilots, but they're like, hey, if you like this, maybe hire on Nathan Fillion to do more stuff. You know, it's not necessarily a pilot, but it's a contained story. You know, you have a beginning, middle, and end, and then you have a little bit of a cliffhanger if they wanted to continue a franchise onward from there. But I definitely had a confined story, like there's arcs for the characters, beginning, middle, and end with the mother-daughter relationship. So, yeah, not necessarily a pilot, but enough of a cliffhanger to make you want more.
Okay. Got it.
As someone who just recently started playing the Uncharted games, I beat the first two games in the last week. I'm into that Nathan Fillion thing. My question for Tristan is, I feel like the show, now I don't know much about it, but Jennifer Garner is older, obviously, than Daphne Keane is, and she's, out of college or whatever, and she's a spy. The whole idea of Alias, I feel like she's like going undercover and stuff. How does that? I don't really see like a kid like Daphne Keane being like this spy that is going undercover in these places, and people aren't just being like, why is this kid here? Like, I don't get the connection of a kid being an alias. Like, it doesn't necessarily, I like your pitch, but it doesn't necessarily seem to be what I get from like reading the description of the show. So just kind of explain why you went younger with it.
I went younger with it because I wanted to make it the mom-daughter relationship from the original, but also I involved like child trafficking and child prostitution, like things that a kid could be undercover within. Like my idea was when she's taking down the child prostitution ring at the opening scene, she's like undercover as a kid among these child prostitutes, and that's kind of her role. And then when she's taking down this child trafficking ring at the final scene, she's undercover as a kid among these trafficked kids. And that's something only a kid could be able to pull off. You can't put Jennifer Connelly in the original show like a college-age person among these children. They'd stand out too much. So I wanted to lean into the child aspect and the undercover aspect and have her be only she could pull that off. Only the daughter from the original show could pull that off. Jennifer Connelly as an adult couldn't pull that off. Jennifer Gardner. Too many Jennifers going on.
Or Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah.
Okay, so based off that, I have one other question. Is she doing this on her own, or did an organization send a child in to be an undercover child trafficked sex slave?
No,
that
she's
seems a little problematic if she's sent in by an organization.
No, she's doing it on her own. Her and her mom have this kind of spy operation they've been running themselves apart from the whole organization. So
her mom does it.
I mean, that's the whole premise of the show. Like,
that was my main
Alias,
thing.
So it's Batman bringing a 12-year-old into a fight with guns.
If you watch Alias, you know that the organization she works for is not necessarily the good guys. Like, they do a lot of problematic, questionable things. Good. And I think the fact that like they're sending this kid into danger is supposed to be problematic. Like, you're supposed to be like, oh god, they're putting this kid in the front line. That's bad. Like, you're supposed to see the problems of these characters.
Okay, that clears that up a bit. That's what I was wondering. I was just like, wait, so like, I was picturing it as like an MI6, like a James Bond type thing, and then sending a child to be like, yeah, you're gonna be a sex slave, and we're gonna
No.
put you in danger. But
No, that's like
that makes more sense.
what I do know about Alias is that throughout the show, you realize how kind of bad the organization is, and that's one of the main plot lines. So,
Got it. All right, I think I wrapped my head around that. I didn't know much about the show, so that helps me understand Tristan's plot better. I like both pitches here a lot. I think this is going to be a close fight.
and we're both judging
And
this.
we are, yeah, judging this together. So hopefully, we have a consensus. Tristan gave his pitch first, so he'll get his minute on the clock when he starts talking.
What I really like about mine is that it's faithful to the original with the cast, but you don't need to watch the original to know what's going on. You need the opening needs enough to establish like, oh, okay, it's this mother-daughter spy ring, and there's these questionable morals going on with the young woman. Like, you don't need to watch the original show, but if you have, you get the extra level of joy. You know, you're seeing the characters brought to life, and I think mine walks that middle ground perfectly. If you like the show, you're in love with this because you're seeing the new characters, but if you don't the show, you're just vaguely familiar. You're like, oh, it's that spy show
30
from
seconds.
the early 2000s or whatever. You get to see that here. So I think mine gets both audiences, and I think it short and sweet, in and out, kind of spy fun. I think that fits for this kind of a thing. Back to something, from the early 2000s for a short little burst of fun and nostalgia for some people, and then maybe more after that, but you just get this one short film that brings you
10.
back to nostalgia. So I think mine is good for that, and Joe's doesn't necessarily. As a fan, I wouldn't necessarily be into Joe's as much as I'd be into mine. You can take my 3 seconds, Joe. You suck.
Okay. There you go. Yeah, and just so you guys know, like, if you run a little, you can finish a thought within like 5 or whatever seconds after the countdown runs out. So I just want to let you know without interrupting your last few seconds.
Yeah.
As long as that thought isn't Joe sucks after the time expires.
Yeah.
Right.
You ready?
Yep.
All right. So yeah, I think partially I feel like Tristan's almost trying to have it both ways, where it's like, okay, if you're like not a fan of the show or fan of the show, you can enjoy the short. But also I feel like if you're not a fan of the show, you're not really going to understand like the whole like problematic and the fact that the organization kind of sucks. You're just going to be watching it and be like, this mom's just a shitty mom sending her daughter into like this child sex ring. Like, I feel like maybe you'll be able to understand it if you're not a fan, but I don't think you'll really care, and I think you'll just be kind of confused about everything. And then
30 seconds.
Like that at the beginning, and then it moves to like a parent-teacher conference scene, which everybody loves parent-teacher conferences and loves watching those. So I don't know if that's really gonna draw people in. I feel like with mine, you have like that mother-daughter dynamic, but it's kind of similar to the show while doing its own thing. It takes it in a different direction. So if you're a fan of the show, you get similar aspects. But if you've never seen an episode, it's not really tied to the show in any way.
Okay. All right. So Tristan, you get 2 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, so you mentioned that mine wants to have it both ways, and that's like literally what I want to do. Like, that's what you should go for with something like this. You want to appeal to the fans of the original without being too faithful to the original, without being so tied up to being a sequel that you're confused. And I think mine doesn't necessarily do that. And you mentioned like, oh, parent-teacher conferences, who wants to watch that? And it's like that's the joke of the scene. Like, this is a funny scene. That's a contrast between the action of the opening sequence and then this parent-teacher conference is like this mother-daughter dynamic is one time on the spy thriller side and the other time on the actual like parent-teacher mother-daughter side. So you get both elements of that relationship and just in the short film. So I think the parent-teacher conference scene adds a lot to that, where you're getting these what would be traditional mother-daughter roles, but they're filled by these spy characters. And you mentioned like, if you don't know the original, you might not get that this is a problematic organization, and you can easily get that in like a couple lines of dialogue. Like when she makes her mistake in the opening scene and she's leaving and saying like, oh, I was too bold or whatever,
1 minute.
I made a mistake. You can get Jennifer Gardner's character being like, look, I left this organization for a reason. There were this problem, and I don't want you to be part of that or stuck into that. And just in one line, you can establish the fact that there were problematic dynamics in the original show without having to watch the whole original show. So I think mine, you mentioned, tries to have both ways, and that's exactly what I wanted to do, both ways. And you have a great lead in Daphne Keane, back up at Jennifer Gardner. I think mine just feels like a really fun follow-up to the original, while
30
also
seconds.
being appealing to new fans who aren't familiar with the original. And maybe you'll get people to go back and watch the original show to get more from the characters. So That's my pitch. I think it sounds like as a fan of the show, I'd watch it, and as a fan of kind of spy thrillers, I'd watch it. So I'm into it.
Okay. All right, Joe. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I still am not fully like wrapping my head around the idea of the mom being like, I left this shitty, problematic organization where they made me do all this, dangerous and like maybe not so great stuff, and because of that, I'm sending you into a child sex ring. I feel like, like kids in action scenes against adults or situations like that aren't really believable. It's really only believable with Daphne Keene and Logan because she has powers going up against non-powered people. I feel like that's why we've never really seen a live action Robin work, because I just don't think like the idea of this kid fighting adults is really ever gonna be believable and make sense. I feel like with mine it's an older, she's post college. It's also a dynamic we haven't really seen before in this genre of like this older mom or like this older daughter and her mom on the run like that. I haven't, I can't really think of any movie. I think Catherine Bigelow is a great director for something like this. I think my cast is great for this. I feel like I still not fully bought on, if you're not a fan of Alias, you're caring about Tristan's short story, where mine, I feel like people that are fans of Alias can understand like the parallels between my movie and the show. And if you've never seen an episode, you don't really need to see the show at all to understand anything. You don't need to go back to the show to fully understand the characters, like Tristan said you would in his and yeah, that's all I got. I don't need another full minute to just repeat the same points against Tristan's.
Okay. All right. Well, Johnny and I did not. Well, we have a couple little things here right now, but what are your thoughts, Johnny?
My thoughts are this. I mean, Tristan's compared his to the Nathan Fillion Uncharted short film, which is 14 minutes long, and it's about him getting captured and trying to escape a gang, basically, and Punisher Dirty Laundry, which is 10 minutes long, and it's basically just he sees these guys, this gang, and beats them up and kills them at the end. And I think Tristan just tried to fit way too much into that. I think Tristan's works really well as a full-length feature, but I think if his story was very simple and it was, you get a very brief, like, okay, she's undercover, maybe she's on the radio, and you get like brief exposition, and then it's her escaping this or stopping these people, and it's like 15 minutes. I think that works better for a short film, but Tristan got into the mother-daughter dynamic and getting into a prequel of the show or whatever, or a sequel to the show and stuff. And I just think Tristan tried to fit too much in that I don't think works as what he set up as a short film. I think overall, if both were feature-length films, I think Tristan's might work better, but that wasn't what was pitched. And I think Joe's just, I could see that story actually playing out. I just think Tristan tried to fit too much into something that would be a little short. I think he should have just stuck like very straight and narrow to one singular kind of plot and thrown it in. I really love Daphne Keene, and I think that could have been interesting, but I just don't see that necessarily working as a short film as much. So I think that is kind of my tiebreaker, because I think it was close, but I think at the end of the day, Joe's just, as a fleshed out Catherine Bigelow directed film, I think would be something that could tell a compelling story. And I think that's kind of what it comes down to. I like Joe's cast a lot. I like his directing choice too. So I think that's it was very close, but just that's my little decision on it. So Bobby, do you agree with me, or are we gonna have to fight it out?
I do want to say that a short film can be 50 minutes or shorter. Yeah. So like you don't have to be a 10-minute short film.
40 minutes or shorter for Oscar stuff. So I picture it as that. So I just think, I mean, yes, if it's like 40 minutes, okay, but I do think it's a lot for something in short film to like get into the family dynamic. That's kind of
so. Here's what I'll say. Like, I'll say we won't have to fight it out, because Johnny, I was waiting on your text, and you agreed with me and basically just reiterated kind of both our points in your kind of decision that you said. But basically, yeah, I think Tristan, if it was a full length, it would have been closer, but I think Joe had a full fleshed out, like I could see his movie and picture it. Yours, because you are making it 40 minutes or so or longer, it does still, it like, to me, it just sounds like a pilot still for a new Alias TV show, because that's probably about the length of time that those would be instead of a short film. But regardless of that point of like the length and like the TV show, I think just I would, in a short film, I prefer a more simple plot, and I think that Joe in a full length version of his
Three
movie
scenes?
just sounded a little bit better to me. But it's close. Like Tristan, it's just a little things that added up. Like to me, it was a pretty close fight, but I think just Joe's.
Yeah.
I could picture that a little bit better.
I think with just trying to introduce stuff and all that, I think it works better as a full length. I think Tristan, with his plot, could have made his a really, really interesting horror film. And I think that's what I would have liked, kind of the direction to go towards. And I think he just didn't go fully with the plot. But Daphne Keane being caught in this horrific scenario and maybe being trapped in this area trying to rescue these girls that are being sex trafficked or something, and making it more of a horror film. I think that could have been really, really good and definitely would have won you the point. But I think at the end of the day, Joe edged that one out, but it was close. And I'm interested to see what you guys have next, because we don't really have any today that have been runaway winners. So I'm waiting for one of you to just blow us away with one pitch and kind of blow the other out of the water. So Tristan, what do you got for us to blow us out of the water with your next movie?
I'll do my best. Let's go with Gilligan's Island.
Ah, fuck! I thought that's
There we go. Joe doesn't sound super
I don't
confident
know.
in
I
this.
feel like this is either going to go really well for me or really poorly for me. I have a few
I feel the
that
same
are
way.
big.
I
have
hope
a
they're
few that are
both
big
horror
swing.
movies.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're gonna go Gilligan's Island. The film was released in 1996. It got an 11% on Rotten Tomatoes. The director was Betty Thomas, who also did the Brady Bunch movie. And the IMDb description, or the Wikipedia description of why the movie failed, is Betty Thomas followed up the Brady Bunch movie with a parody of Gilligan's Island in 1996. The movie failed to bring the charm of her first take on a 60s show, but is quoted by Howard Stern as the main reason he chose her to direct his film Private Parts, due to his love of Jim Varney's almost grotesque performance as Gilligan. So if you haven't seen the original, it's something to witness. And Howard Stern is probably its only fan. So there we go. There's the Gilligan's Island. And Tristan, who did you say is going first?
I'll go first on this one.
All right. Well, what do you got for us for the Gilligan's Island? I have a sense where Joe's going. I'm interested to see what you're doing with it.
I made my Gilligan's Island a horror movie.
Yes.
Ooh, I like it.
This will be a fun battle.
So for my director, I have John Krasinski, obviously hot off of Quiet Place 2, and he said he doesn't necessarily want to come back to do Quiet Place 3, but he likes the horror genre, and he'd like to work within that again. So I'm giving him a chance to do that here. So my premise here is that when a cruise ship of various strangers crashes on a deserted island, a ragtag group of survivors must struggle to work together to survive. However, on the first night on the island, a mutilated dead body is found, and they realize there's a killer among them. And essentially a slasher movie with the characters of Gilligan's Island. And you get like this slowly decaying of their relationships where they don't know who to trust, and you as the audience don't know who the killer is. You're seeing slasher scenes like Friday the 13th type scenes, but you don't know who the killer is. They're masked. So you have to kind of uncover the dynamics of these relationships and kind of solve the mystery as you're watching along with the characters. And my idea is that they send out a message to the Air Force or whatever they need to do the rescue, the Coast Guard, I guess you could call, and they say, oh, we'll be there in like 72 hours. So they got to survive 3 nights on this island with a killer among them. And you get kind of like that counting clock tension in this movie. And I'll go through my cast right here. I got Gilligan. He's kind of underestimated fool character who is our lead, and ultimately kind of grows him being the foolish outsider to the one they all kind of rely on by the end. And I have them played by Lakeith Stanfield. The character Lovey Howell, the rich kind of socialite who's the older woman who has suitcases full of clothes despite being like a couple of days long of a cruise, is played by Jessica Lange. I think she could pull off that like snobby rich woman pretty well. Thurston Howell, rich and cruelly bold Hollywood producer. He's like the really the richest of the rich among them. I have him played by Stellan Skarsgård, and he's the one who gets killed opening night. So he has a small role in the movie, and then opening night he's killed. And I'll get into it in a second here, but like throughout the first day, you see like all of these characters have reasons that they would want to kill this rich asshole. because of course Gilligan's getting bullied by him because he's like the outcast. He's not really like the rest of them, and he's making tons of moves on the attractive women of the camp. So he's a target for everyone the first night. And Ginger, as a character from the original, of course, she's a hot young model who gets tons of attention from the survivors. She's kind of like the really hot girl among the cast, and is played by Anya Taylor-Joy in this. And Marianne, she's also a woman in the cast, but she's kind of the one who's often overlooked in favor of Ginger. And I have her played by Olivia Cook. She can play that kind of like slight outcast like she does in Bates Motel or something like that, or even Me-Girl and Dying Girl. Yeah. And I have the professor, the scientist. I have him as like a science teacher in a college who is the moral center of the group, played by John Krasinski himself, the writer of the director and writer of the movie. He cast himself in Quiet Place, so I think putting him in this supporting role here would be a good fit. And then I had the skipper. He's kind of the short-tempered ship captain. He didn't want to get into all the situation. Now he's dealing with all these ridiculous passengers on this island that he was not ready for this. And he's played by John Goodman. I think he played that pretty well. And you get this dynamic where, of course, the first night Thurston is killed, and everyone kind of is suspicious of each other. They're saying, "Oh, you know, Ginger, you were harassed by him last night. Of course, it was you." And "Oh, Marianne, you're just jealous that I got his attention. You didn't, so it must have been you." And "Oh, the skipper, you have such a short temper. It was probably you." And they immediately start turning on each other, and you get this. And then, of course, the second night gets even harder because the killer is out there taking them down. They're running through the forest. They're all kind of separated. You get that tension there the second night. And then the killer comes and takes out Marianne. Olivia Cook's character dies the second night. And so does Jessica Lange's character. So we got two deaths the second night. And now, of course, our survivors left are Gilligan, Ginger, the professor, and the skipper. So we're way down in the cast here. So the third night, now they're all turned against each other. Oh god, there's more deaths. What are we gonna do? And they all separate. They kind of have their own little clans of each other that they're faithful to. And the third night, it goes all off. You know, they're like, okay, in the morning, this Coast Guard's gonna get here. All we gotta do is make it through literally the night. But of course, as a horror movie does, it goes off the last night, and we get the reveal here that the killer was Ginger, the hot young model who gets all the attention. Anya Taylor-Joy's character, she is the killer the whole time. And they were kind of right about Stellan Skarsgård, like he was harassing her, but she was like, "Oh, I didn't care about the harassment. I just killed him because he didn't cast me in a movie that he was casting." And there's this kind of backstory of like, I think that's part of a horror movie. All these characters that you think are disconnected have these connections, and you start to uncover that like throughout their lives, they all had these chance encounters with each other, and that kind of brings characters together. And then in the last scene, Gilligan and Lovey escape. The professor is killed in the last scene. The skipper kind of leads them out, and he's kind of the one who gets them off the island. And then they're kind of floating out on this like makeshift raft that the professor built, and floating out in the ocean, they get rescued by the Coast Guard, and you get this kind of cliffhanger ending of. You get a reveal here that Lovey Howell herself was kind of involved in the killing too. So, just even though Anya Taylor-Joy was caught and left on the island, maybe the second killer also got away. So you have a bit of a horror movie twist at the end where the killer gets away and can come back for the sequel. And that's my pitch for Gilligan's Island as a horror movie, a slasher. You get these iconic characters from the island who are just kind of taken out one by one and turning against each other. And I think Jack Krasinski pulled it off really well. It's different from a Quiet Place, but it's still in the horror genre, so I'd be into it. That's my pitch.
All right, kind of an interesting new horror take for John Krasinski. I'm into it. Joe, what do you got for your, I'm guessing, horror movie, Gilligan's Island?
All right, so I went in a slightly different direction, and when Tristan started to say who his director was, I thought he was going to say my director, and I thought we were going to go in a very similar direction, which was always a pain to fight against. But instead of John Krasinski, my director is Jordan Peele. For the role of Gilligan, I have Lucas Hedges. For the skipper, I have Russell Crowe. For Thurston Howell III, the millionaire of Jason Isaacs and his wife, Mrs. Howell will be played by Laura Dern. For the role of Ginger, I have Emma Watson. And then for the professor, I have Jeffrey Wright, who is in the recent Bond movies, and he's also going to be Commissioner Gordon in the next Batman movie. For the role of Marianne, I have Laura Harrier, who is in Spider-Man Homecoming and BlacKkKlansman. So My movie is set in 1964, which is when the show premiered. And the three leads of my movie are mainly Gilligan, the professor, and Marianne, with the skipper, the billionaires, and Ginger, all kind of representing various people in power. So after a big storm, they get marooned on an island during a tour. The professor, a botanist at Howard, tries telling the group what plants are edible and which aren't. However, he's kind of ignored by pretty much everyone in the group except for Marianne and Gilligan. The rest eat poisonous plants and finally only listen to him when on their deathbeds when he offers them an antidote. Afterward, as time passes and resources on the island get scarce, the group starts to turn on each other. Those who are used to having power turn against Marianne, Gilligan, and the professor. So we have the skipper, who is, starts to get very violent and aggressive, especially towards the professor and Marianne. The millionaires shun Marianne and the professor from the camp, not wanting to be around them, which will create kind of a level of mystery as Marianne and the professor aren't really sure what's going on at the main camp. Ginger tries to befriend Marianne and acts kind to her, but when push comes to shove, she sides with the skipper and the millionaires. The horror comes a lot from the jump scares of the skipper kind of running out and chasing the main leads that they have to eventually fight, and not knowing who they can trust as the members of the tour show their true colors throughout the movie. When our three leads finally defeat the others and at the end and it looks like help is coming, Gilligan admits that he sabotaged the boat on purpose because he had been drafted to the Vietnam War and he knew whatever happened to him on the boat was better than what would happen in Vietnam. So he kind of wanted to represent like that ally that you thought was with you for the entire time, but he turns out he's kind of the reason for your demise. And then the ending of the movie is they see a ship off on the horizon, but they don't really know if it's here for rescue, if it even sees them, or if it's even looking for them. And that's my pitch.
Joe, I got all your casting except who was your Gilligan?
Lucas Hedges.
Lucas Hedges. Got it. Okay, that's what I missed. All right. Bobby, you have any questions for them? You're the one making the final decision on this.
I mean, nothing specific other than I just want both of you in your fights to kind of justify the type of horror movie you chose. Like, why did this fit for you for Gilligan's Island? Not really something that I need, like, a specific answer right now, but just kind of address it whenever you do get to your fight.
Yeah, I'd say my I think both of you went a little different directions with the horror that we've seen both these directors do. I think these are two of the top 5 horror directors working today. But my main question, I guess, is for Joe of what we've seen in Get Out and what we've seen in Us is a lot of racial and societal commentary on those movies. And I know yours obviously is kind of doing that with the Vietnam thing, but it seems like a kind of a different take of what Jordan Peele's shown us. So what in your movie kind of is making me feel like it's a Jordan Peele movie and not just like any old horror movie?
So one of the things with casting, a black actress for Marianne and a black actor for the professor, one of the things I wanted to do is, like, even though the professor has this job where he should be respected, you have most of the other crew is not respecting him, and same with Marianne, as she's kind of ignored. And it's kind of one of the things is like to show how, like, everyone's marooned on this island together. Everyone's essentially equal, but the millionaires, because they have all this money, which ultimately doesn't matter, they view themselves as better than everyone else on the group. And Ginger, who's used to being, like, popular and famous because she's a movie star, again views herself as, like, better than other people in the group, even though, like, there's 5 of us here, no one here is more famous than anyone else. And same with the skipper, he's used to being in charge, but it's like you've never been marooned on an island. And then here's the professor, who actually has knowledge about the situation because he's a botanist, and because he's, like, black and it's 1964, they just kind of ignore him. They're just like, oh, what you're saying is not, we don't care about what you have to say.
Okay, that answers that for me, and I don't have any other questions, so we'll start the fight. Tristan did his pitch first, so he'll get the first minute to defend why his movie is better than Joe's.
Before I forget, I want to address Bobby's question really quick, and, like, why did I make it a slasher? And I think the premise fits perfectly. Like, it's a contained location in a really short cast list. It's a perfect slasher premise. Like they're all stuck on typical slasher, like a cabin in the woods, and this is like an island in the ocean. So you get the people that can't leave, they can't escape, but it's a short cast list, perfect for a horror slasher. And I'd like to see John Krasinski get out of the sort of like monster thriller genre of horror and get into and try a different subgenre of horror here. I don't like Lucas Hedges' cast in Joe's. I think he's
30 seconds.
an okay actor, but I don't see him as Gilligan. Gilligan's like the buffoon kind of goofy character, and I don't see Lucas Hedges playing that. And I'm also not a fan of your ending. It's just like, oh, they see a boat and maybe it helps them, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. And I think mine has a more definitive ending with the bit of a cliffhanger for a
15.
horror movie, but you still get the ending of the movie. Like it's still over. You know, you get the answer to the question, they escape, and yours doesn't answer any of the questions. It feels like I'd finish that movie and I'd be like, well, okay, I guess it's over. You know, and mine just has an actual ending. So I'll get more into my defense on my 2 minutes, but I'll hand it off to Joe now, see what he has to say for his 1 minute.
Okay.
Joe.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right, I think I partially kind of answered your question with answering Johnny's question, but one other thing too is, you know, horror movies always, like Cabin in the Woods played with it a lot too, of like horror movies have these like classical archetypes, and I feel like Gilligan's Island does as well. You know, just by watching the theme song, they're not even like, this is Steve. They basically are like, this is the skipper, this is, you know, the millionaire, this is the movie star. Like they have these classical archetypes. So that's why I kind of went towards the horror with this. And I feel like with how I answered Johnny's
30
question,
seconds.
I kind of answered why I went with what I went with. As far as my ending, I feel like I partially tried to tie it into the show as like they were constantly marooned on this island, but they would still have like visitors come to the island. So I kind of wanted to tie into that a little bit of like the ship's coming, but you're kind of, you know, it's never like they land on shore and rescue them. So you're still partially wondering if the ship's truly coming for them. So, you know, it's kind of like the choose your own adventure type of ending. Like, do you think it came for them, or do you think they're left marooned on the island like in the show?
Okay. All right, Tristan, 2 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, so for my 2 minutes, I'm gonna attack on your Jordan Peele choice a little bit. You kind of defended the social commentary a little bit, but you didn't defend the racial side of it. And I think Jordan Peele, one of the things he seems to pride himself on a lot is forwarding black voices and forwarding black stars. And you have 2 black actors in your movie, sure, but almost all of your cast is white people. And I think Jordan Peele shines when he's able to take black actors you didn't necessarily know before, like the lead of Get Out, and suddenly he's a household name. Suddenly he's a Oscar nominee. Suddenly he's leading franchises. And I think Jordan Peele could have been a good pick if you had like a prominently black cast instead of like 2 black actors in your movie. So I think that kind of misses the premise of a Jordan Peele movie. I also think that John Krasinski's a better choice because I think he showed in Quiet Place 2. He worked with that deaf actress. He's a character that typically in a movie would be like dismissed and someone they wouldn't take seriously. And I think that's something similar to Gilligan's Island. Like you have these characters
1 minute.
you wouldn't necessarily take seriously. Like Gilligan's a fool, but he's key in figuring out who the killer is. People underestimate him and say stuff they wouldn't say around him because they think, oh, it's just Gilligan. He doesn't know what he's doing. And he's the one who puts it all together and figures out the killer at the end. So I think that's very faithful to John Krasinski's style as a director. Underestimated characters that kind of come through at the end and become the leads. And I think mine just sounds like a great direction for John Krasinski's career. And I think yours feels like a bit of a step back for Peele. I think I'd like to see him do more creative, interesting stuff.
30
and
seconds.
Stuff that forwards black artists and not a bunch of white people and then like 2 black people in the cast and that's it. I think mine just fits the director a bit more and is a better direction for his career. I don't think Jordan Peele doing a Gilligan's Island movie with a bunch of white people is what I want to see. So that's my argument for mine. I'll surrender the rest of my time over to Joe.
All right.
Who sucks?
That's what I was waiting for.
Yeah, I was like, there you go. All right, Joe, whenever you're ready.
As far as the Jordan Peele defense, the one thing I would add is I feel like for my movie to work, you kind of need the white people to outnumber the black people, because if it's like 5, you know, black people and 1 white people, I feel like the dynamic in the movie doesn't necessarily work. And as far as the unknown actress, I feel like Laura Harrier and her, you know, in the movies I've seen her in, has proved that she is a good actress and could lead a movie, but she's mostly played small roles, and I feel like she could be kind of like what Lakeith Stanfield was in Get Out, or what a number of the actors were in Us. I feel like she could be that for this movie. On as far as like John Krasinski, I just don't know if like a slasher movie that's a take on Gilligan's Island is like going to be a step forward for any director. I feel like it's kind of, you know, a standard type thing. I'm not going to say like, oh, this Gilligan's Island movie is going to push Jordan Peele's movie forward, but I don't know if there's a director out there that directing a remake of Gilligan's Island is going to push their career forward.
1 minute.
So I wasn't exactly focused on that aspect. And I just don't know if like a John Krasinski take on Gilligan. Oh, and one thing I did want to add was as far as Gilligan being the buffoon, I kind of didn't exactly want to go in that direction because I feel like it didn't fully go along with my tone and my story. But I did want to have him kind of be a buffoon in the end, where you realize he was the one that sabotaged the boat and put him in that situation. So I feel like there is that aspect of Gilligan of being the buffoon there, and I will concede the rest of my 22 seconds or whatever it is. Also, Tristan sucks.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm making the final call, Johnny. So I think I know where I'm going, but I could actually be like kind of persuaded one way or the other here. So what do you got?
It's tough because I feel like since both are horror movies, both are by very good directors, so I trust them with this project. A lot of the kind of deciding factor for me, I felt like would come down to cast. Unfortunately, Anton Yelchin was tragically killed years ago, because I feel like he would have been a really, really good Gilligan in a horror take on Gilligan's Island. That's like who I kept picturing in a role. I would have really loved like a rom-com type of Gilligan's Island directed by Wes Anderson. I think that could have been a good direction. But both of you went horror. And I think what it comes down to for me is what's like the next step for these directors, because I like both casts. I don't necessarily love Lucas Hedges as the lead as far as what I know of Gilligan, but Joe did a good job arguing why he chose him and how it's a different character. So that kind of, canceled that out for me. So I think just as far as like next step for a director's career goes, I think Tristan made a good point that this would be a step back for Jordan Peele. And I think that this would be a fun step forward for John Krasinski to go more of a slasher movie rather than what we saw in A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place 2. So just as far as what I'm looking for with these directors, I think I'd rather see slasher movie by John Krasinski than Jordan Peele just kind of doing a movie that seems like a watered down version of what we've seen from him. So I would go personally with Tristan's, but it is very close.
Yeah, this one was very close. And I do think that for a few different reasons, I'm going in the same direction. I think that the type of cast, like the style of show and the cast that you have for Gilligan's Island does play itself very well, I think, to a slasher. That fit really well in my head, like when I was picturing a movie of like, you're going to kill off these very stereotypical kind of characters as you go throughout the movie. I think that just kind of fit. And again, yeah, I think that Jordan Peele directing Gilligan's Island, it didn't quite work quite as well in my head as far as what I'd like to see him do and what I think he could do as a director for that type of movie. So I think I'm going Tristan as well. And we're going to tie it up at 2.
Well, there we go. I do think while both of you chose better directors, I think an interesting horror take on this would have been like in Eli Roth style. They go to an island. They think they own the island. Gilligan is more of this kind of cocky character, but then it's like this tribe of like cannibal type thing, and you get this really heavy, dark, gory, R-rated horror movie. I think would have been an interesting like kind of direction to go. It was tough because both of you went. While both movies were different, it was similar in the end, like just in terms of tone and style. So I think like more of it's gory but fun type of Gilligan's Island with fun characters dying off would have been a little more I think would have maybe won the point over a little more. But I think both of you pitched very good horror movies that I would have wanted to see. So that being said, Joe lost that point. It's now tied 2-2. What are we doing next, Joe?
I'm gonna go with another gamble as far as mine goes, and I'm gonna go with the show I picked with Hogan's Heroes.
All right, I was waiting for us
And
to
I'll
get
go
here.
first.
All right, Hogan's Heroes. The film came out in 1976. It got a 54% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was directed by Michael Camino. Due to creative disagreements between the studio and director, the original NC-17 cut of the film was cut down to a PG rated release. Some elements of the film were praised, such as the performances of Eddie Albert and Ryan O'Neal, but overall the film was heavily panned and had little success at the box office, mainly due to the weird editing of the movie. So yeah, this was something that had traction a little bit. They wanted to go really dark way, and then it got edited down because the original show wasn't intended that way. So I'm interested to see what you guys did with it. Yeah. So I'm interested. Joe said he's going first. Let's see what you have to say about Hogan's Heroes.
All right, so my director is Drew Goddard, who has done well with ensemble casts, and he's somewhat fit more the tone I'm gonna go with. And I'll before you make too many judgments, I'll just read my pitch. For the role of Colonel Hogan, I went with Chris Pine. For Corporal LeBeau, I went with Guillaume Canet, who is in the movie Joy and Noel. For Corporal Newkirk, I got Riz Ahmed. I have Denzel Whitaker, who is in Black Panther and Warrior, as Staff Sergeant Kinchlow. For Technical Sergeant Carter, I have Will Poulter. And then I have, for Sergeant Schultz, I have Daniel Bruhl, who was in Inglourious Bastards, and he was also in a number of MCU movies. And then for Colonel Klink, I have Thomas Kretschmann, who is in A Taxi Driver, and then Avengers Age of Ultron. And then I'm introducing a new character called Robert Clary, who's going to be played by Logan Lerman. So my movie is a little bit slightly darker and more serious than the show. It's not a slapstick comedy, and I want to take it a little more seriously. So, for my story, Robert Clary is a wounded American soldier who is brought into the World War II. Is brought into the World War II POW camp. There, he meets Colonel Hogan and the crew. Hogan tells him it's their job to get him out, and as he points to the walls surrounding the camp, he says to get them to the other side. Clary feels he should be in the camp for what he did, and Hogan doesn't want to press the issue and lets it go. Hogan tells Clary that they've gotten a lot of lost souls out, but that getting out of the camp is never easy. The guards here are mean and nasty little devils. Hogan introduces Clary to his team, giving a rundown of their backgrounds and areas of expertise. Riz Ahmed's character asks Clary how he managed to get in the camp. Clary doesn't want to talk about it. Hogan presents Clary the plan that uses all of the team's various skills. Clary says he isn't worth it. He deserves to rot in the camp. Hogan asks him why, and eventually Clary breaks down. His squad was sent to ambush a platoon of German soldiers, but he was too scared. As they rushed into their death, he stayed behind and hid in a foxhole. The next morning, he woke up to a couple of Germans standing over the foxhole. He says they shot him and drug him to the POW camp. Hogan says that Clary still has time to make up for it, but he needs to get out and move on. That night, the Germans in charge of the camp drag Clary away to interrogate him. They know the prisoners have been escaping the camp. They want to know how. Klink and Schultz torture him all throughout the night, but he won't budge. He refuses to be cowardly anymore. Eventually, they give up and throw him back with the others. Hogan tells Clary it's time to go, and they are busting him out at sunrise. One of the crew serves as a distraction as Hogan leads Clary to a tunnel. He tells Clary to crawl. Clary starts crawling and saying it's dark. Hogan says just to keep crawling. Eventually, we hear him yell out, "There is a light. I see a light at the end of the tunnel." Just then, the shot turns black and white and grainy, the camera pans, and we see a face-mapped or deep-faked Rod Serling, the original host and creator of The Twilight Zone. He says Colonel Hogan leads a very special camp. You see, his camp isn't located on the war front. No, his camp is located in a very special place between heaven and hell, a place that helps lost souls move to the great beyond and out of the Twilight Zone. And that is the rule I use as I cross my movie over with another franchise, and that is with The Twilight Zone.
Interesting. That is not what I was expecting from Hogan's Heroes, but I like it.
Sorry, I missed that last part. What was that?
Basically,
you missed the entire twist of his pitch.
Yeah, basically, the POW camp is actually purgatory, and they're there to usher people out
It's the
of
Twilight.
purgatory
Yeah.
into like whatever whatever afterlife you want to say is, and it turns out that it's the Twilight Zone essentially. It's
Got it.
my release.
And who is your director?
Drew Goddard,
Okay, that's what I.
who's worked
thought.
on shows
I
like
just didn't
Buffy
know.
and other things, and done like big ensemble type movies.
All right, interesting pitch. Tristan, what do you got for us?
All right, so for my Hogan's Heroes, the rule that I use, I'll say, is I use a cast of stand-up comedians. I went a bit more faithful to the tone of the original show than I think Joe did. And my director choice was Bo Burnham. He's a stand-up comedian. He's had some great directorial work so far, and I think this could be a fun, very comedy-oriented work for him, but also with enough social commentary to make it something that would fit within Bo Burnham's world. My premise here is that a team of Allied POWs during World War II who have been routinely breaking out high-risk prisoners under the nose of the Nazi guards must step up their game when a new warden begins to crack down on the prisoners and come closer and closer to discovering the truth of their heists. And that's just the basic premise. I'll get through my cast here really quick. My Colonel Robert Hogan, I have him as a POW who's the leader of the team. He's been planning kind of small escapes for these high-risk prisoners, so they're not doing like big, huge escapes. They're like, oh, this one woman who found out her husband has cancer. We have to break her out so she can get back to America to see her husband. Like very, very small breakouts. You can hide under the radar. That kind of thing that you could see getting past the guards. And my Colonel Werner is the leader of the POW camp. He's kind of the comedically unaware leader of the camp who doesn't really like see what's going on, and he just kind of aloof a little bit. And I have him played by Larry David. I think that'd be really fun. Obviously, he's Jewish, so it'll be fun to see him play like a Nazi guard at a camp. And I think I can see him playing like this super out of touch guy who doesn't really know what's going on in his camp pretty well. The right-hand man of Klumper, who's always eager to prove himself as the best Nazi of all the Nazis, is played by John Mulaney, also Jewish. I made a point to cast Jewish comedians as my Nazis as a fun subversion, similar to like Jojo Rabbit did, where you cast people that Hitler typically would hate as the Nazis, as a nice lampooning of the Nazis. And among the Hogan's team here is a scientist, kind of an explosive expert of the team, who's played by Tiffany Haddish. I think that would be a fun subversion of the role a little bit for Tiffany Haddish. And I have also a French conman who's sort of like the talking his way out of everything kind of character, who's played by Paul F. Tompkins. Not a super well-known comedian, but he's had a lot of supporting roles in TV shows, so I think he'd fit well in the supporting role here. I know him most for BoJack Horseman, but he's been in a lot of live-action stuff like Community and things like that.
Gotta love Paul F. Tompkins.
And the newest member of the Hogan's Hero is kind of a fresh-faced American soldier who comes into the story as a bit of our eyes and ears into it, is played by Bo Burnham himself. And the new warden who comes in after the first act and is kind of the one who's cracking down on their plots is played by Sarah Silverman. So like I said, we beat Hogan's Heroes. They're doing an escape where they're breaking out Prisoner, a cameo by Bill Hader, who's done stand-up before, but isn't necessarily active as a stand-up comedian, so I think it will be better to have him as a small role here. He escapes in the beginning sequence here. And you see the team kind of working in tandem. They're all kind of at their prime here. They're under the nose of the Nazis. They break out Bill Hader with virtually no problem. So we're in opening sequence, we're kind of seeing the Hogan's Heroes at their prime, pulling this off and doing what they do best. And then the next morning, we meet Larry David's character, who's just a completely out-of-touch leader of the prison. He's totally unaware of the escapees, and he brings in a new prisoner played by Bo Burnham, like I said, who is, after the first sequence, is kind of our eyes and ears, introducing all these characters to us. You know, he's the new guy, so he meets Hogan, he meets all these characters and kind of learns their roles in the story here. And like I said, John Mulaney is kind of the sidekick to the lead guy here, or the lead Nazi here. So he's constantly wanting to impress him and show off, despite the fact that the main character, or the main Nazi, Larry David, clearly does not care about this guy. Like, he's just like shrugging him off. I can see Larry David playing that really well. He's just like shrugging and not super into it. John Mulaney's taking this Nazi stuff super seriously, and then Larry David's like, oh, we're just guarding this prison. I don't know. And so the plan, the Hogan's Heroes plans another escape for Bill Burnham's character, but this time it goes wrong. An explosion goes very wrong, and the alarm stops sounding, and guards all kind of charge out, and they capture Paul F. Tompkins' character. He's captured, and they're planning to execute him, and he's being kind of interrogated to say, "Oh, sell out your friends, sell out who's helping you with these escapes," and he says, "Oh, there are no escapes. It was an accident." He's lying for his team. He's defending his team despite all this Nazi torture. Uh, so meanwhile, the team decides they got to break out with little Frenchie and escape altogether, or they'll be caught and surely all killed by this new prison guard. Uh, so like I said, after this second attack where Paula Tompkins is captured, they bring in a new guard to clean up the mess that Larry David left, and that's Sarah Silverman's character, who comes in and is the one that kind of cracks down the rules and says, "Oh, these prisoners, what's going on, Larry David? You've got prisoners that are missing." And he says, "Oh no, we have counsel." And he says, "Oh, one, two, you know," and then she says, "Oh, but you brought Bo Burnham's character in, and then you lost one. Like the numbers even out." And Larry David's like, "Oh, I don't know, he's just kind of not in touch with reality at all." So she's cracking down on this a lot, and it becomes kind of like a heist breakout movie from the second half on, where they're trying to break out Paul F. Tompkins' character. They're planning this heist together, and Bo Burnham is filling in the role here. He worked as an explosions. He worked with explosives in the military. I had him as sort of like a D-Day veteran who was captured later on in the war, and he talks about his work in the war. And he's not as good as Fricke, but he can do his best, and he becomes kind of like the next member of the team here. And they break him out, and they escape, and it's just a nice victory movie where the good guys win, the Nazis lose, and you kind of make a fool out of the Nazis. And like I said, I made a point to cast them all as Jewish actors, which I think would be a nice, fun subversion. I mentioned Jojo Rabbit as kind of an inspiration because I think that movie did a good job of making the Nazis out to be buffoons, but also like dangerous buffoons who are actual threats. And I think that's what I'm trying to go for here. Like, these are dangerous people, but we're kind of lampooning them, but at the same time, like, they capture Paul F. Tompkins and torture him. So there's a moment there where you're like, oh, I'm taking this a little bit more seriously. But the fact that it's filled with all these funny people and you're just lampooning the Nazis a bit is a nice balance of fun with also a bit of the serious stakes to it. And that's my pitch for Hogan's Heroes with stand-up comedians.
All right. That was a long one. I liked it, though. I'm into both. Bobby, do you have any questions? This is one we're deciding on together.
I mean, you both described it pretty well. I don't really have any particular questions other than like maybe just like coupled casting choices and stuff like that, but that's nothing more that I need like a justification on other than just in your pitches. So I don't know. Do you have anything specific, Johnny?
Not really. I'll say Tristan missed a couple opportunities with his casting. I think Paul F. Tompkins doing his Werner Herzog voice, being a Nazi guard, would have been fun as far as what he was going for. And I think it was a missed opportunity not to cast Anthony Jeselnik as a Nazi if you know his stand-up and kind of how he is and how he looks too. I think would have been fun to be like the darker character. But I like both pitches, so I'm interested to see you guys fight it out. And Joe's going first with his minute.
Yeah. Bobby looks frozen.
Yeah, no, whenever you're ready.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. Yep. I thought you were frozen, so I was waiting for you to unfreeze, so I'm good. All right, so I have a few number of things against Tristan's, mainly with the casting. Like, part of the reason I went a more serious route with Hogan's Heroes is I feel like part of like the comedy and the style and like the more comedic route of it, I don't know if it necessarily like holds up with the storyline. Like, part of it was they stayed in the prison camp because they knew they were more important to the war, busting out like these big higher profile prisoners, where I feel like with yours it's like, why are they staying in these camps just to bust out like these random
30 seconds
no name people? And I also feel like how high profile and or like how dangerous and how hard can it be to break out of the camp when Larry David's running the camp, basically not giving a shit. Like, I feel like it definitely lessens the stakes, and I feel like, how is there any way that they could possibly be caught when Larry David might as well just open the gate and be like, come and go as you please. I don't really know what's going on here. And I feel like it's like too comedic. There's no like, there's Nazis in the movie, but I feel like they're just so buffoonish that it's really there's like no teeth to it, and I feel like it's just not. It needs to be some level of drama.
Okay. All right, Tristan, whenever you're ready.
I like that mine keeps the tone of the original, and I think it's a good time to make fun of Nazis while still taking them a little bit seriously. You mentioned like, oh, why are they staying here saving random no-name people? And like, that's why they're staying here, so they can save random no-name people. Like, I think my theme of this movie, it's still comedic, but I want the core of it to be like individual people matter, like small people matter. They're breaking out not big military guards who are like the shining star of the military. They're breaking out like a mom who wants to see her kid, but they're breaking out like small time people who want to live a life and are stuck in this camp and they can't do it, obviously. And I think that is kind of what I wanted to go for. Like, sure, there's small
30 seconds.
individual people. That's kind of the point. And you mentioned the stakes, and I think the stakes are fine. Like Larry David is the beginning of the movie when they're kind of doing their own thing, and then of course Sarah Silverman comes in and that ups the stakes. Like you have this slacking kind of guard in Larry David, but you have Sarah Silverman come in who's taking it very seriously, and I think that's what mine has. That you're just that I think you try to attack on, but I don't necessarily think it's a strong attack because I think all of those are intentional parts of the movie.
Okay. All right, 2 minutes, Joe, whenever you're ready.
All right, so as far as defending mine, one of the things I liked about mine is more like the allegory of everything. Of like the Nazis in my movie are basically representations of demons or like a devil type being. So I kind of like that aspect of it, and that's why I made them more serious and more thing. And I like to kind of go in the different route of it. It's like, yeah, it's a POW camp and they're breaking him out, but it's like, okay, this POW camp is not just like obviously your standard POW camp. And I thought it was kind of an interesting mixing it with a franchise that you never would think to mix. Like, oh, I'm going to mix Hogan's Heroes and like Twilight Zone. But I think, you know, the way I pitched it and the way I put it together, I think it works really well. And I feel like Twilight Zone's like a very popular franchise. And even if you don't happen to know what Twilight Zone is, I feel like the way I pitched it and everything, people are still able to understand what's going on. And I feel like that makes it different and interesting, where I feel like yours is just like a goofball comedy that I don't really know if anyone is going to ultimately care about. Just because, and also to attack your director choice, like Bo Burnham is very much into like, you know, timely movies and having things to say. And he was very like deep into with 8th grade, making sure it was like timely and making sure it was accurate. And I just feel like he's not really going to be into making a Hogan's Heroes like goofball comedy World War II movie that's not exactly like timely today and isn't, you know, relevant. And I just feel like that's not exactly his type of movie that he would ever make. And I have no idea how much time's left, but Bobby went away, so it's got to be close to time.
What are we doing for Bobby now? Are we waiting, or should I just start going?
Oh, he's back.
Oh, there he is.
Bobby, did you hear what I said at all? Oh, he's frozen. Bobby, did you hear me at all?
Hold on. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Gonna go out on a limb and assume he did not hear anything I said.
I think he heard it all he needs to know. I haven't really talked to Bobby about this one.
Tristan still has 2 minutes.
Yeah, I still have my 2 minutes.
I can time you if you like trust me to time you.
Oh, I got a timer.
Right.
Let me pull it up. All right, ready? I'll start when you start talking, Tristan.
All right, I want to address Joe's choice of the Twilight Zone as his crossover franchise. I think he doesn't use it well or use it enough. I think the Twilight Zone, what made it so unique is that it was using sci-fi to comment on real-world issues. It wasn't like, oh, here's Nazis in a camp. It was like you're using a high sci-fi concept to talk about real-world issues. And I think yours is too grounded. Yours is very much about the camp, about the prisoners, about the war, and then throwing in the Twilight Zone thing at the end. I don't think it fits very well. And I think what Rod Serling loved to do in the Twilight Zone is he had this past of like, oh, I'm going to make sci-fi stuff, and then they're going to let me do what I want to do. And I think yours doesn't use the sci-fi at all, really. It's like suddenly at the last second, it's a Twilight Zone movie, and I don't think that fits very well. I think you want to lean into that sci-fi stuff for the Twilight Zone, so I think yours just kind of totally misses the dot on what a Twilight Zone episode is and what makes Twilight Zone so unique. So I think that was it could have been a good choice, but you didn't use it well at all in your pitch here. And I think you mentioned Bo Burnham as a bad choice, but I think this is pretty timely. Like racism is very prominent in our society, and I think you could use it as a way to comment on racism in our society today. And I also mentioned like it talks about the importance of the individual people, about the small group going against the big, large, massive conglomerate of Nazis. And I think that's something that Bo Burnham would attach to too, is like a modern timely issue of a small group of people standing up. You saw inside he was very distraught about the current situation of the world and wanting people to stand up and change it. So I think this is something he could lead into
30
as
seconds.
the small group of people who are standing up, facing against the Nazis. And even though it's comedic, even though it's like a slapstick comedy, I mentioned Jojo Rabbit on purpose because it is a comedy, but it doesn't lose like the threat of the Nazis by the end. You're able to still take them seriously by the end, and you're reminded of like how seriously these Nazis are. And I think my Paul F. Tompkins torture scene and like this the new Sarah Silverman character kind of helps you take the Nazis seriously.
5,
My movie.
4,
And Joe, you
3,
suck.
2.
Can I just quickly say, like, very few episodes of Twilight Zone were like sci-fi.
That's not true.
That's very true. I've seen every episode of Twilight Zone multiple times. Very few of them were strictly sci-fi.
Yours is zero sci-fi though. Like,
yeah, but
no sci-fi.
like there were a number of episodes that were zero sci-fi. Like
a couple.
Most of the episodes were.
I don't know. I think a lot of Twilight Zone, like you have the casino episode and you have a lot of stuff that's like, it's revealed at the end that it's purgatory, or it's revealed at the end that like something kind of crazy is going on. Yes, I think Joe's fits into that fine. I get where he's going with it. While maybe it's not the strongest use of crossing over, I do understand what he's going for. So that being said, Bobby back in. Bobby, we're deciding on this together, but I think we're split. But what would you choose based on what you've heard?
He froze again.
I think he said Tristan.
I think so.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. It was very close for me. I was leaning a little bit towards Joe. I found
All right. Well, I heard Bobby say he's leaning towards. Oh.
Yeah, towards Joe, but it's very close. So.
All right. We'll go at this way because Bobby's locking out or whatever. So I don't know. It's tough because I'm kind of split because Tristan, I think, missed some opportunities with his. I think with Bo Burnham as a director, even going more towards like a Jojo Rabbit, I don't know if, first of all, that Bo Burnham has shown the ability as a director to compete with like a Taika Waititi level film. I think they're kind of in two different classes, but I do love Eighth Grade, but that's not something that I picture as like a comedy. If Bo Burnham was directing a more serious version of Tristan's movie, I think that would have made it stronger. So what's tough is I think both movies sound good. I like Joe's use of Twilight Zone. I do think that's a good pitch. But at the end of the day, for me, and I'm deciding right now because it's like 51-49. Personally, I think I'd agree with Bobby and go with Joe, based solely on the fact that I think he stuck to a tone that really worked, and I think Tristan's tone was a little too much over the place, like kind of all over the place for me. The Larry David thing, I think, is kind of funny, but I think if you have the Larry David type role and then also have like some serious torture scene, I think that movie is a little too much one way or the other, and I think Joe stays at least more consistent tone wise. So I think that's like the very basic and very base deciding factor, but it was very close. I was going back and forth as I was talking, and I think at the end of the day I agree with Bobby because he already chose Joe. I think I'm going to go that way as well, and go with Joe. But Tristan did pitch a good movie. I just think he missed a couple opportunities to make his movie a little darker than it could have been. While, you wanted to go with more of the tone of the original, a lot of the original, the comedy came from the kind of heroes of the show interacting, and there was not much comedy coming out of the Nazi type characters. I think Tristan went kind of the opposite direction with that. So I think Joe just pitched just a slightly stronger movie. So that makes it 3-2, and Tristan lost. So he's going to have to win this one back to push it to Game 7.
I will say I've spent most of my thought for all of these pitches trying to defend like Twilight Zone, because basically I thought the main attack would be like, oh, it's not like that popular, people would be confused, and that wasn't brought up at all, and I'm almost disappointed.
No,
I spent so much like
Twilight
brain
Zone,
time.
I think Twilight Zone, you can do something new with it.
Yeah.
The problem is like the new show of Twilight Zone was kind of a failure.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even
It wasn't
watch it,
very
and I'm a
good.
massive fan of like the original series, and I didn't even watch like just because I heard people be like it's not that great, so I'm just like, eh.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I love Jordan Peele, and I watched the new season, and I was like, this is a big disappointment. But I think yours stuck closer to what I picture, like the original Twilight Zone. I
Yeah.
think that's what kind of excited me about your twist at the end, is that it felt more like old school Twilight Zone than what they're doing nowadays with it, and I think that that helped you.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, we're at over 2 hours now, so we got to go to the next movie. Tristan, what are we going next? You got either M.A.N.T.I.S or
Let's just go with
M.A.N.T.I.S.
All right.
I'm going with M.A.N.T.I.S.
All right. There
I
we
think
go.
we have the
I'm
same
excited.
two. Trying to figure out what rules he has left, because I think we have the same.
Yeah.
I
You guys
think
have matched
I
up
haven't
a decent
no,
amount.
I haven't used Cast of Comics, and he has used rom-com when I haven't. So
Yeah, this is one coming up though that I don't think either of us have used. I'm not. Oh, I think you might have used it actually, because my rule here is I have a cast of all women. I'll just go first on this.
All right. Well, M.A.N.T.I.S was released in 2009. It got a 4% on Rotten Tomatoes. The director were the Brothers Strauss. Trying to capitalize on the success of superhero movies Iron Man and The Dark Knight in 2008, Dow Studios spent their last remaining budget on M.A.N.T.I.S in 2009, only to see the film bomb, causing the studio to declare bankruptcy and permanently shut down. R.I.P. Dow Studios.
All because of M.A.N.T.I.S, you know. I mean, it would have been.
M.A.N.T.I.S killed Dow.
All right, I'll get to my pitch now. Like I said, my rule is all women, and my lead and my director is Michaela Cole. She just came off of a bunch of Emmy nominations from May Destroy You, which was a great HBO show that was able to bring in social commentary, and I think she's really a promising director, and I can't wait to see what she does next. And this is going to be what she does next. She's our lead character. I have a couple other cast members in here, but I'll get into that in the pitch. During an unprovoked traffic stop, Mila Hawkins, who is played by Michaela Cole, the lead, and her sister, Sarah Hawkins, are harassed and shot by a police officer, played by Elizabeth Moss. Sarah, the sister, dies, and Mila is put into a coma. She awakens to find out that a cop who killed her sister got away with it with no consequences, and was even defended by the police chief and the mayor and a bunch of people who were in powerful positions. So she makes it her vow to get revenge for her sister, but of course she's in a coma, so she's having this very, very, very slow physical recovery. It's not going to her timeline. You know, she wants to get out and do this now, and she can't do it, and it's very frustrating for her. But during her recovery, she's approached by Joan Stonebeck, who is a character from the original that I have played in here as sort of a stand-in for that character, but I have her played as sort of a powerful tech influencer, played by Angela Bassett. So my Stonebreaker kind of asks Mila if she truly wants revenge for her sister, and of course she says yes, and she offers her an experimental technology called the M.A.N.T.I.S program. It's a full body exoskeleton that allows her to not only walk again, but give her extra strength and stronger defense. So now Mila, along with the guidance of Stonebreaker, kind of takes revenge on the system that wronged her. I'm going for sort of a promising young woman feel, but rather than taking on like sexism and rape culture, it takes on systemic racism, police brutality. I think that's something that our director can pull off pretty well. So we see Mila's kind of vengeance plan start to decay her relationships. Even though she's getting kind of this newfound confidence, the more she does it, her relationship with her family and her friends are kind of decaying because of it. So we have that kind of complexity that I think could be pulled off really well by Michaela Cole as a director and an actress. And you also have Stonebreaker, who has her own motivations. She wants to make the current mayor look bad so that she can run for mayor herself. And she says, "Oh, if I increase police activity and we increase like this outcry against police, maybe it'll make the mayor look bad, so that I can have my run for office." So you have this like kind of a bit of a complex political uh, element there, and I think that is kind of what I was going for. Like she's getting this revenge on the cops. Like we have this similar to Promising Woman. She's like hunting them down in these situations they wouldn't necessarily be suspicious of her in. Like, and I think Michaela Cole in that show, she showed that she can play like the meek and kind of easygoing kind of person. Then she can also play like the real person, like the one who's traumatized and the one who's troubled. And I think that she can be the person who the cops underestimate. And they like if she goes out to a and gets pulled over in some traffic stop, what she's trying to do is like she gets purposefully pulled over, and then if the cop shows any sign of like racism or prejudice or any sort of abusive power, she takes him out with her mantis abilities. So you get that kind of like in Promising a Woman, she's doing things that sure might be like morally justifiable in a way, but are also a little bit morally complex. So you're like, wow, she's really going far with this and taking her revenge on people. So that a bit of a moral complexity because the original Mantis show was supposed to be about that. It was supposed to be about black people being empowered and kind of taking the system into their own hands. And the studio reshoots kind of after the pilot turned it into the sci-fi ridiculousness. So I wanted to go back to the faithfulness of what the original show was trying to do. So I made it a racial commentary with some action with the character, but a little bit more of a Promising a Woman kind of style drama. And I think Michaela Cole is a great director to pull that off and a great lead. So that's my pitch for Mantis.
All right, interesting. Joe, what do you got for us?
All right, I went in a little bit different of a direction. My director is Gina Prince Bythewood. I will say the rule I used is I made this a rom-com. She directed The Old Guard, which is a Netflix movie that got 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, and she also directed Love and Basketball, which is like a romance kind of comedy movie from the 90s that also was highly regarded, 83% on Rotten Tomatoes. So she kind of has done kind of these action-y kind of movies as well as this romance kind of thing, which I'm going for. So my Dr. Miles Hawkins is going to be played by Sterling K. Brown, who's in This Is Us, Hotel Artemis, and then he was the uncle in Black Panther. I have the role of Leora Maxwell, who's going to be played by Zoe Saldana. And then I also have the role of Joan Stonebreak, who is going to be played by Aquafina, who I feel like is a good like side character in a rom-com. So Dr. Miles Hawkins is a single man who works long nights in a cybernetics lab for Box Industries, along with his assistant Joan Stonebreak. One night, Miles and Joan's lab is raided by a hit squad led by the notorious assassin known only as Ladybug. One of them draws a gun. Miles, cracking a joke about the situation, points his experimental laser gun at them. Miles' gun doesn't work, and Miles is shot and left for dead. Joan, who was hidden away, calls 911. Months later, Miles is in the hospital and told he will never walk again. Miles notices a new woman, Leora Maxwell, in the office. Joan says he should go talk to her, but he feels she wouldn't be interested in a guy in a wheelchair, and Joan disagrees. Since Miles and Leora work closely with each other, they flirt back and forth, but Miles never pursues it. Miles begins using his technology to work on the suit so he can walk. The suit works and better than expected. He can run faster than an Olympic sprinter. He can jump 20 feet in the air. When he extends the suit to his arms and torso, he is super strong. He realizes he can go after Ladybug and the hit squad. With his newfound confidence, Miles asks Leora out, and she says yes. She is curious about his ability to walk, and he says the doctors call it nothing short of a miracle. Miles soon has to start balancing his dating life with his life as the hero known as Mantis. There's a scene where Leora tries to get Miles to invite her into his apartment, but he refuses because he is hiding that he is still technically paralyzed. After a fight between Mantis and Ladybug, we see her go back to her hideout, where it is revealed that she is in fact Leora. We see her hiding the fact that she knows she paralyzed Miles. Miles is hiding his super identity from Laura, and of course Miles is getting advice from Aquafina's character through all of this. The movie ends with a final fight where both of their masks are removed and all of the secrets are revealed. Leora realizes Mantis' weakness and destroys his suit, leaving him paralyzed. However, because she loves him, she can't bring herself to kill him, which allows Miles to grab his gun and incapacitate Ladybug. Ladybug is ultimately captured, and the Mantis lives to fight another day. And that's my pitch.
All right, Bobby, you have any questions?
No, my internet's going to keep going in and out, so I got to keep it pretty short. But
there There it is.
All right, that was short.
Said it. That was
Should have
short.
been shorter.
Short and sweet. Yeah. Should have fucking just asked it. I don't know. I don't have any questions really, so I'm interested to see what you guys have to do to fight it out.
Do you want me to do the time still and just put it in the chat?
I can do it.
I can't see the chat, so don't do it that way.
All right, Johnny will do it.
All right, so I think Tristan goes first.
Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, Michaela Cole, I think it's a great director choice. She directed and wrote every episode of May Destroy You, and that was like a huge critical hit. And I think, like, we sometimes knock directors who haven't done movies before, but I think some of the best movies out there are like first-time directors, like Jordan Peele did Get Out. And if you pitch the guy from the show, some sketch show doing a horror movie, you'd be like, that's terrible. And I think mine has a director who's really, really prominent on TV who gets her chance to do a movie. So I think that's a really great director choice. And I think bringing in the racial elements of the original is really significant too, because the original show was attempting to do that. And then the studio kind of came in and said, oh no, we can't do that racial stuff. We can't be that political, you know? So I think this is a chance for them to do the Mantis they wanted to originally have, like a racial commentary element. And I think Joe's misses that mark a lot. And then mine leans into that. And the Promising Woman comparison, I think, is really apt because that was a great movie that was able to bring in social commentary without being super overbearing and still entertaining.
That was my alarm.
I timed it out, you know?
There we go. I liked it. All right, Joe. I'll start when you start.
All right, the thing I like about mine the most is that I feel like it's a storyline we haven't really seen on the screen before, of like this whole, you know, hero and villain love dynamic that I feel like could be very interesting. You put Awkwafina, she's super popular right now, especially for a rom-com. I think she could definitely add a level of comedy to this plot. You know, I definitely think it's something that people would be interested in seeing. I feel like Tristan's just for a very limited audience. I don't know what the big reach for that. I feel like a superhero rom-com movie could be, you know, have very massive wide appeal that people would be very interested in seeing. I feel like you know, my director has shown she can bridge both worlds of like a romance comedy as well as an action movie. So I feel like both aspects of my movie could be developed well. And that's all. I'll concede my other 10 seconds or whatever.
You have to at least say Tristan sucks.
Tristan fucking sucks a whole lot. Sucks way more than everyone else here.
There you go. All right, perfect time. All right, so Tristan, what is your 2-minute rebuttal to Tristan sucks more than anyone else?
I mean, I think my movie is really good. You're like sure it has a mass appeal or something, but like we've seen so many superhero movies, and I want to get a different movie. I mean, I want to get like a revenge thriller where we see black characters empowered who are able to take on the revenge against these corrupt systems, but also at the same time not getting rid of the complexity of that situation and leaning into the fact that like what this woman is doing is kind of questionable, similar to Promising a Woman. Like, of course, you set up against sexual assault and violence, but you start to question her motivations and you start to question her actions by the end. And I want that to be in this movie too. I think you have the lead of Michaela Cole, who's a fantastic actress, and I love to see her take on this direction. I really like my cast too. I think you have I didn't mention that my police chief is Selma Hayek and my mayor is Jennifer Connelly, so I wanted to get kind of a strong range of women in here and not necessarily make the barriers literally black and white. Like our police chief is Selma Hayek. There's a little bit of a complexity there, so I wanted to get into that with mine. And I think that mine leans into the original a little with that kind of a premise, but it also changes it up. It doesn't go to the sci-fi ridiculous dumbness of the original movie, and I think Joe's does. Joe's feels like a dumb kind of, oh, it's a superhero love story, and it's like, okay, I guess, and there's like a lot of action, and I don't know, it just feels like something that I would watch and forget about, and I think this feels like a really promising feature debut for a director that would be something that puts her on the huge map, and it's something that would even get like a lot of Oscar buzz, maybe, you know, like I think this could be a genuinely really good movie. And Joe sounds like, I don't know, a fun romp or something, but mine sounds like an actual good movie. So I went for a good movie. Joe went for like a superhero romance that might get a lot of ticket sales, but would be something that would be acclaimed. And I think mine would be acclaimed. And that's all I got for my 2 minutes.
All right. You got 5 seconds.
Joe sucks.
There you go. That's what I was waiting for. All right. So, Joe, You get 2 minutes on the clock. Your time starts when you talk.
All right, so one of the things I've seen, like I'm apparently a 14-year-old girl that scrolls through TikTok occasionally, and one of the things I've seen on there for a number of creators is, specifically black creators, is like wanting a movie that like has black people that can just. This is a movie that has black people. It doesn't necessarily have to. Not that like the movies that touch on race and deal with police brutality and other political themes aren't important and don't have their place, but part of it is just why can't we just have a movie that has black people and stars black people and can be about whatever. And so my movie fulfills that gap. It's different. It doesn't have to be a fully politicized movie. It can be a popular, wide spanning audience or reaching movie that can tell its own story and doesn't necessarily have to have politics in it. Like something like a Crazy Rich Asians, which, stars all minorities for the most part, and it's super popular and it's super well regarded, and it doesn't necessarily have to have political themes and all of these other things, and it can just stand on its own and be its own thing. And also, Tristan's, just like he says, it's like Promising Young Woman but different. So, and Tristan sucks.
Gonna say.
Tristan
there you
sucks.
go.
And there you go.
Tristan sucks.
All right, Joe gave up his last 45 seconds. Bobby, I'm the deciding factor on this one, but do you have a pick here?
I am.
Maybe just type it in the
You
chat.
are out. All right, I'll say
I'm here. If you.
Oh no.
Right,
Yeah, just type it in the chat because I don't know what he's.
Yeah, you're fucking done. All right, here's my thing with this. Joe's movie sounds like Thunder Thighs or whatever the fucking Melissa McCarthy movie that just came out is, and I'm not into it. Tristan's movie sounds like something that I would see. As pissed that I am that this is going to fucking round 7 when we've been trying to shorten our episodes, I'm going to
I'm
go
not gonna
Tristan
lie.
here.
I was like this close after our pitches before we fight, just saying give Tristan the point. Let's go to round 7 because I'm not gonna win this.
Yeah, Joe's didn't sound very good. It sounds like the Melissa McCarthy, Octavia Spencer, Thunder Thighs movie, and I'm not into it. Tristan sounds good and something that I would want to see. I don't care if it has mass appeal. I don't give a shit about.
Yeah, I didn't really have a whole lot of arguments about it because his sounded like genuinely really good.
Yeah, his is like, well, what if I take the original idea of it and kind of just go off it? So, well, whatever. We're going to Game 7, and that brings us to Quantum Leap. Time Jump.
I'll go first too.
Came out in 2000. Joe will go first. Quantum Leap Time Jump came out in 2000. Got a 17% of Rotten Tomatoes. The director, RIP, is Richard Donner, who recently passed. All right, and this is the little description I have from Wikipedia. A passion project of legendary director Richard Donner, Quantum Leap Time Jump, bombed in large part due to the film star Christian Slater's 3-month prison stint, delaying production in 1999. With only half of his scenes filmed, the producers decided to edit a full film together and release it with almost no promotion. So that kind of hurts your movie when your lead star is only there for half of the filming, and then you decide to release it anyway. So I'm interested to see what you guys do with a full actual timeline of filming movies. Right. And Joe said he's going first, so I'm going to start the clock whenever you start talking.
All right. So I'll just start with this. The rule I use is one must have a cast comprised completely of stand-up comics. My director and star is going to be Chris Rock. He's directed a few movies. He hasn't directed a movie in a while, and I feel like this could be a movie for him to come back. The role of Admiral Al Calavici is going to be played by Bill Burr. And then the role of Sam's brother is going to be Tom Beckett is going to be played by Gerard Carmichael. So for my pitch, I have the original series was comedic, dramatic, and emotional, and I want the tone of my tone of my movie to basically be a comedy with heart. So I said in the not too distant future, Sam Beckett is a physicist working on time travel. Over time, progress stops and funding stalls. However, Sam nearly drowns at the beach and is saved by a stranger. He is reminded of his own brother's death at an early age and decides to go back in time and save him, even though the machine isn't properly tested. Beckett takes along his communicator, which allows him to talk with his friend, Admiral Al Calavici. Sam awakens to...
Oh, you're waiting just a minute, but that's not what I'm supposed to be doing.
Sam awakens to find out he is in the body of his younger self. It is the summer of 1990, before his sophomore year of college. His brother Tom is entering his senior year. It's Wednesday night, and Sam knows that by Sunday evening his brother will die after being hit by a car walking across the street. Sam does everything in his power to keep his brother from where he died on Sunday. That includes a lot of college-type hijinks of drinking and partying, which is kind of the bulk of my movie, is the brothers hanging out in their college days. Sam is maybe enjoying his time a little too much and is constantly being berated by Al, who's trying to make sure he stays on track and focused on saving his brother. There are emotional moments of Sam interacting with his brother for the first time in 30 years. We get to Sunday evening and as much as Sam tries to keep Tom from the spot where he died, the universe keeps intervening and pulling him back towards it. They're hanging out on the sidewalk when Tom sees a young father struggling with his child's stroller stuck in a storm grate. He rushes over to help, but as Sam tries to help, he buckles over and doesn't feel well. He starts coughing and spitting up water. That's when Al pops in and intervenes. Apparently the reason Tom was hit by the car is he was saving someone else, something Sam never knew. And the child in the stroller turns out to be the one that ultimately saves Sam from drowning in the beginning of the movie. So Sam is left with the choice of saving his brother, but knowing 3 people will die, or letting his brother die so 3 can live. Sam ultimately decides that his brother has to die, but he is glad he got to spend those last few days with him, giving the movie a bittersweet ending. The movie flashes, and Sam disappears, and if you're a fan of the original Quantum Leap, you'll know he is leaping into another body, leaving the movie open for a sequel. And the show is ultimately about choice and helping people make the right choice, and I think for a story that's one movie and not a series of episodes, I wanted the story to be about the main character's choice and not them getting someone else to make a choice. And that's my pitch.
Joe, your pitch was over 4 minutes.
That sucks for you, I guess.
I don't know why I was timing it, but Tristan, I'm going to time you. What's your pitch?
Oh, no. Well, for my rule of keeping track is one is a rom-com, so my Quantum Leap is a rom-com. Joe mentioned comedy with heart. What's more of a comedy with heart than a literal rom-com? My Sam Beckett is Chris Hemsworth, and my Nina, who's his love interest throughout the movie, is Alison Brie. And my director is Max Barbacow. We've used him a lot, but I think he's able to balance, when Palm Springs, he was able to balance sci-fi and romance pretty well, so I brought him into this, which I think he could do a similar thing here. So we meet and experience Sam Beckett, who I mentioned is played by Chris Hemsworth, and he's running his Quantum Leap game for years now. And Joe mentioned he kind of like leaps between different bodies and tries to fix like historical flaws within their lives, and so we see him doing that here. We see that he's at his peak of his game though, so like he's able to fix these problems in like seconds. You know, like he's racing L, the AI that he works with in this version of the movie, and he's saying, "Okay, time me," and he runs and he comes into someone's body, and you have a scene here where he goes up to like. He's in some like teenager's body because the girl he likes, and he says, "Oh, I love you," and that's all he has to do. And he's like, instead of taking like 40 minutes to fix a problem, he's such an expert that he can do it in like seconds. But the fact that he's so good at his craft and he's kind of unfulfilled, he's kind of lonely. He doesn't really have anybody to connect with. He's just doing his Quantum Leap stuff and kind of not really having someone in his life. That is until he wakes up in the 1500s, way back in the past, and he's like, "Oh, another Quantum Leap, another chance." To fix the history, but then he has an encounter with Alison Brie's Nina. She seems somehow familiar with him, but he says, "Oh, that's impossible. Nobody could recognize me, let alone like know who I am." But they have this sort of meet cute encounter where they have this interaction really quickly, and she seems to know who he is, but he's not sure who she is, and he kind of just leaves and warps to another body. But then he gets in the 1990s. He's in another body, and he has another encounter with Nina, who seems like she hasn't aged a day, and yet she has no idea who he is at all. She's never seen him before. She's very confused of who this guy is, what he's talking about. He says, "Oh, I saw you in the 1500s." She says, "Oh, that's impossible." You know, she's very confused by that. And he eventually realizes he's fallen in love with a time traveler, someone who's able to, of course, travel throughout time. So that's why her aging isn't necessarily consistent. And I wanted to lean into like sort of a 51st dates, but the dates are all out of order. Like for Sam Beckett, we're in Sam Beckett's chronological order, but not necessarily Nina's chronological order. So he's meeting his third date with her might be like his 20th date in her eyes. So you have this sort of interesting relationship dynamic between the two of them, where she's sometimes ahead of him on the relationship, sometimes behind him on the relationship. So that could be a really fun rom-com dynamic to add to the mix of the rom-com. But you do follow that typical rom-com format where they meet cute at the beginning, they kind of start to connect, they start to hang out. He realizes like, oh, she's known me so well that she can recognize me even in different bodies. So there's that element to it, and it kind of grows over the course of the movie, and they have a falling out, and then a coming back together, and they kind of unite together. She's a time traveler. He has this quantum leap going on, so they work together in the finale to sort of fix the history of a character, and you have this coming together of the two romantic leads in a classic rom-com format. I think that fits pretty well, and you have Max Barbakow, who I think can balance the sci-fi and the rom-com pretty well.
All right.
Okay.
Tristan, your pitch is 3 minutes and 30 seconds. You beat Joe.
I'm better.
I don't know about that.
All right. Well, Bobby, you're breaking up a little bit. Do you have any questions?
Nope. I understand them both. I'm leaning a certain direction, but it's very close.
All right. My question is this for both of you: How dare you not do Quantum Leap and bring back a cameo from Scott Bakula, the great Scott Bakula? That's what I need. All of your time.
He's still on TV.
All of your time should be defending
I can
your
go that
choice
right now.
not to bring back Scott Bakula.
I can do that right now. I went first, right?
Yep.
All right, so
Talk about Scott Bakula for 1 minute.
I can do that. So basically, Scott Bakula is great. He's amazing. You can currently actively go watch him on TV, but I felt a better use of this rule was one last final great villain performance from Alan Rickman. I thought. I felt like.
What?
Yeah, and that's how I used the rule. Yeah. That's how I felt was a better use of that rule. But to actually,
but he's not Scott Bakula.
But to actually attack Tristan's thing, if I get an actual full minute for that, if my last rambling dug in, one of the things I wanted to keep with Quantum Leap was kind of that decision of choice and like helping other people. And I feel like, I kind of changed that and made it the main character's choice and kind of made it, revolve around the main character. I feel like Tristan's like, yeah, he leaps into bodies, but I just don't really know how this, like, as far as like being Quantum Leap goes, it doesn't really like fit for me, and what like Quantum Leap truly is, and kind of the story and everything with Quantum Leap is just like he's bouncing around bodies. And then I also
30 seconds
as far as like meeting up with her and them always finding each other, like I don't know like why necessarily she's jumping around either, and like just the mathematical ability of them meeting twice, let alone like 20, 30, 40 times. Like, I would be confused about that the whole movie, and I feel like it would constantly take me out every time they run into each other. Of, like, how, of all of time and space and all of the billions of people in the world, like, the fact that these people keep running into each other, I'd be like, this movie's dumb.
But and no Tristan Scott Bakula. All right, Tristan, talk about Scott Bakula for a minute.
Look, the reason I didn't use Scott Bakula is because I thought it would be fun to turn this into a rom-com, and I think the rom-com is a good choice here. And Joe mentioned, like, oh, this isn't what Quantum Leap is. And it's like, oh, he wanted to lean into the choice. And I think the choice is a huge part of this. Like, he's choosing to leave behind his routine of helping people to go after this woman and to follow his romantic interests, and to, for once, make a choice for himself rather than for these strangers that he's interacting with. And I think that is what I was trying to go for in terms of the choice aspect of it. And I think the fact that he's fixing his own life rather than fixing somebody else's life is an interesting choice for a movie version of Quantum Leap. You want to up the stakes a bit on that. And you mentioned, like, oh, how do they keep interacting in all of this? And I think the fact that she's a time traveler is why. Like, they have a chance encounter once, and because she can travel through time willingly, freely, she's able to just track him. And like, they have this chance encounter once, sure, but then she knows who he is, and she's able to kind of re-encounter him again. So that's my argument for that.
All right, not enough Scott Bakula talk. All right, Joe, you get 2 minutes to talk about Scott Bakula.
All right,
where'd it go?
Scott, M.A.N.T.I.S. Los Angeles. It's a show that old people watch, but also, necessary roughness. If you haven't seen it, watch that. Also, fuck other people, help yourself. That's the message of Tristan's movie.
Oh, I didn't hit start.
I only really started talking. Yeah, fuck other people, help yourself. That's the message of Tristan's Quantum Leap.
Scott Bakula is not dead.
Shit. We know.
He was in an episode of It's Always Sunny. He sang a song. It's my favorite song.
All right, let's start the clock at a normal thing and let Joe.
No,
do his
you're
pitch
on
and do his
23
argument.
seconds, Joe. You're losing time.
I've been conceding time. I probably don't need the full minute.
You're losing time.
But anyway, so with my movie, I think it could be a fun dynamic of seeing Chris Rock, and I also think mine could have like funny moments of you have Chris Rock looking like 40-year-old Chris Rock needing to borrow like Gerard Carmichael's ID so he can sneak into bars because people like look at him and don't see him as a 21-year-old, and you can have like a lot of the hijinks, a little bit of those college movies, but also I think for the most part it's about like the relationship between these two brothers, and the brother kind of as an adult truly meeting who his brother was for the first time, because he was like a young dumb kid the last time he saw his brother, so he didn't really get to fully see who his brother was. And I think I like the dynamic more of like the classic trolley problem of, do I save my brother or do I like let my brother die, but then in turn me, the like this little kid and this dad get to live. And I feel like that's way more interesting of a movie than just like, fuck other people, I'm gonna go fall in love with this one girl and hop around time and use these other people's bodies, which was a big problem people had with Wonder Woman 1984, if he's co-opting these people's this guy's body.
Raped a guy?
Yeah, that's basically Tristan's movie, but he's doing it with a bunch of different people throughout time. And Tristan sucks.
All right, cool. Tristan. Joe wasted 12 seconds of not talking about Scott Bakula. I'm interested to see what you have to say about him in your 2 minutes. I started the timer. You better fucking talk.
I think
That's not how that works.
10 seconds.
Oh god, my mic was muted. Oh no. Well, Joe's movie sucks. My movie doesn't suck. So for my movie, I leaned into the rom-com elements, and like I think I leaned into the premise of Quantum Leap. Like he's jumping around time, jumping around places, and I really wanted to get that element of various different times in this woman who kind of disrupts his routine, you know. And I think we've seen the Quantum Leap routine over and over again on the TV show, like episode to episode. So if we do it in a movie, you want it to be like something that breaks that routine, something that is big and something that is kind of different. And I went for that with mine. I went for something that Scott Bakula is on his Quantum Leap routine, but he's breaking it to be in this rom-com movie here. And we have that woman, Nina, who is the inspiration to kind of have him change his routine. And you get an arc from both of those. Like Nina's traveling through time, not connecting with people, but she meets this one guy you can also kind of travel through time, and he has the same arc. So I think what makes a rom-com great is that both of the characters have arcs to change. And I think mine, you get both of those characters having some growth. Nina's the time traveler who doesn't connect with other people, but then she has the Scott Bakula encounter where, well, of course it's not Scott Bakula, it's Chris Hemsworth, who is, I would think, a bit more attractive than Scott Bakula. But
no,
yeah, if I saw Chris Hemsworth, I would definitely be in love with
30
him.
seconds.
So yeah, Joe sucks. My movie is good. And
no.
I think that mine leans into the premise of Quantum Leap and leans into the premise of a rom-com, and I think Max Barbacow would be a great pick because he could balance sci-fi and romance. So that's my attack on Joe's because he sucks, and I'm curious to see who won the episode. Joe, you suck.
So am I.
Yeah, because Chris Hemsworth has been great at leading movies.
I have thoughts if you can hear me.
Chris Hemsworth is a great comedic actor.
I need Bobby to talk, preferably about Scott Bakula.
So Scott Bakula is on NCIS Los Angeles or
That's
whatever.
New
No,
Orleans.
New Orleans. New Orleans, that's the one. And so is what's his name from Tokyo Drift.
Oh, not anymore.
on
They
there.
killed him off, I think.
Oh well, he was on there.
Oh, he's
Like
getting
Fast
killed
and
off.
Furious?
Yeah, the
Han?
lead in that. No, and the other, the white guy,
Lucas
Oh.
Black.
Han.
Lucas Black. Lucas Black
R.I.P.
is on
Han.
there. Or was on there. But anyways,
R.I.P. Scott Bakula.
before my internet cuts out, I actually think Tristan brought up a point saying his leans into the premise of Quantum Leap, but I actually think that Joe's actually fit Quantum Leap better to me. The premise that he gave, the actual storyline he's telling, instead of just going into a million different things in the same movie and trying to fall in love. I prefer Joe's story where it's a little bit more like kind of concentrated. on one kind of thing, and Chris Rock being able to do that, I think that fits a little better to me. So I liked Joe's pitch a little better, personally.
Oh, yeah, you did.
But it wasn't like a runaway victory, but I think that Joe's pitch just sounded a little bit more interesting to me rather than Tristan's rom-com.
It's tough because Tristan brought up Scott Bakula a lot more than Joe.
Okay, fuck Scott Bakula as far as
Oh no, Joe talking.
Okay, but who knew? Who was listing out Scott Bakula facts? Like, who was the one out here saying M.T.I.S. New Orleans?
Joe actually brought up the TV
brought up
shows.
Necessary
but,
roughness.
I don't
M.T.I.S.
care about that. I care that Tristan said Scott Bakula more.
Okay, if Tristan
Also
wins
that-
because this whole
He won't. If that's the only reason, then I will overrule it. If Johnny has other reasons, maybe I'll let him talk.
I'll overrule.
I mean, Tristan also said that Joe sucks multiple times.
Tristan sucks way worse.
Which
than
is
me.
a fact.
So I don't know. I'm compelled by Tristan's arguments, because Joe sucks, and Scott Bakula rules. I don't know. I don't fucking know what to pick here. Bobby chose Joe, so I guess I choose Joe.
Hell yeah.
But I'm not happy about it. I
You
like
don't have to
Tristan's
be.
more.
I don't care that you're happy about it.
You like mine more.
You know what?
So
Fuck
I
it.
feel like
I
should...
choose Tristan. So fuck you, Bobby. What are we doing?
Well,
no.
your reasoning is terrible. So
My reasoning
unless you have better,
Okay,
unless you
here's
have
my
better.
thing.
All right, tell me an
I
actual argument.
listened to both pitches, and Tristan brought up the actual plot of Quantum Leap. I felt his character's actually quantum leaping, time warp or whatever the fuck I named that movie. I named it Time Jump. I feel like Tristan's actually had that, and I listened to Joe's pitch, and maybe I just zoned out the whole time, but I didn't actually hear
you
much
did.
actually quantum leaping. I heard
Quantum leap to his
like
younger
one
self.
plot that was like fine, but I didn't hear much
Yeah.
leaping. I
So
need
what
a
I
lot
got-
of leaping, and Tristan leaped more.
Yeah, I went for
What I
multiple
got
leaps.
from it, what I got
More
from it,
leaps.
Johnny, is that Tristan used more leaps, but I don't think it served his story. And Joe did one, and it told a full story with that one quantum leap, which is what they do in these series. Like it's like a single episode of the series.
And I also left mine open for like a sequel where you could have more leaps. In
Right.
A sequel.
But
So
I
I
don't
like
want-
Joe telling a
I
full story
do-
rather than
I-
Tristan's personally.
But I don't want a sequel.
I didn't
feels
say
like an
you
episode
need
of
a
the show.
sequel.
You just said
He
that's a
leaps at the
possibility.
end of his movie, and he could be leaping back home. He could leap into a different body. You don't know.
But here's my argument for Tristan. Look at his glasses.
Okay, look at my hat.
Your hat's
That hat
shit.
is nothing compared to these glasses.
Tristan is
Okay, if
way
Tristan
more-
wins because of his glasses, I'm saying Bobby at least has more reasons for why I should.
I do. Johnny is jumping back and forth between reason and like whatever.
Can I get like
Scott
20,
Bakula and
like 10
glasses,
seconds
so-
to give a point?
10 seconds, go.
Multiple quantum leaps in a quantum leap movie rather than just one. Joe's feels like an episode.
Okay.
Mine feels like a movie scale
All right.
version of
Joe?
quantum leap.
I prefer
seconds.
the simplicity of one.
Yeah, you
I
have
like
a bunch
more.
of leaps that don't like matter, and
This is where we're split. I like a lot of leaps. I like leaping. I'm a big fan of Jumper. I like all the jumps they
Okay,
do.
that
If
movie
that movie
sucks.
only had one jump, I'd be
All right,
pissed.
Johnny is not giving very solid arguments, so
If he's in love with the
I feel
time
like I
traveler,
need
he's
to-
gonna leap a lot. Like that's
Tie
the whole premise of
game!
mine.
Also,
Like, he's in love
Johnny,
with the time traveler,
my
so
other
I'm winning
is
into the premise of
tie!
having him leap a lot.
I like the
Can we
casting of
tie?
Chris Rock in this role rather than Chris Hemsworth as a lead for a quantum leap. I would rather see Chris
Right,
Rock
right.
playing the funny
But,
different
like,
characters.
Chris Rock is Joe's director who hasn't
Spiral
ever
was
really
great,
done
guys.
anything. And Tristan's director is Max Barbacow, who
Yeah,
I
but
think
he's
would
done
make a
one
like
movie.
a good movie.
top.
Yeah, but what is Chris Rock directed?
top 5.
Top 5.
Nothing
Yeah,
like
but
this
that's
movie.
way different than anything Joe said. There's no leaping
doesn't-
or
Yeah, but
Scott
it's like
Bakula in
one
top
sm-
five.
The
That- that's-
story he's telling is more simple, other than just you're basically bookending it with the leaps.
Like,
So
I like to leap.
like what he's telling.
Okay, but his movie has so many leaps to the point it doesn't make sense that they keep running into each other all the goddamn
She's
time.
a time traveler. They're running.
But how
into
does
each
she
other
know
on
where he
purpose.
is? That you
Because
you,
she's
you
a
said
time
he's the one that
traveler.
keeps finding her. You said because he can see her because she's in the same body every time, but he's in different bodies. If she's the one time traveling to find him, how is he the one that's in different? How does she keep finding him if he's in different bodies every time? How does she know where to go?
Because she's a time traveler.
I'm giving you both.
Okay, your reasons are bad.
She met him. The meeting of them is not in order. So she meets him and she knows where he's gone. She's had this whole romance with him. So she's able
We
to
do need a
travel.
tiebreaker argument because apparently we're split on judging.
Here's the tiebreaker. Joe and Tristan, I'm giving you both 10 seconds. Joe, I'm going to start with you. Give me the tagline to your movie. I'm picking whoever has the better tagline.
It's our decision, though, Johnny.
10 seconds. Bobby, shut your
not...
fucking mouth. Joe, you can win me over here. Give me a tagline. I'm starting now.
Okay.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have 3 seconds. You
Leap into the past to save your brother, or save the future.
What was that?
Leap into the past to save your future.
Okay. All right. I like it. Tristan, you have 10 seconds now.
Okay, the original is called Quantum Leap Time Jump. So I leaned into that, and I'm going to make my tagline
10 seconds.
Okay.
All right, Joe wins.
No, hold on.
Tristan didn't say anything.
All right.
Yeah, because he had all of the time that I had to think of something too. It should have been you both say something right now. It shouldn't be Joe, you get 10 seconds. Tristan, you also get 10 seconds.
Than him, and he had more time than you, and Joe said something I like.
I'm going to rule as the co-judge and being more sober than Johnny. Joe wins due to better arguments and better reasoning rather than whatever Johnny said.
Joe had an actual tagline. Tristan did not give me a tagline. Joe,
there's always time for love is a tagline.
That's not a good
rom-com tagline.
I already won. I was already declared I won. I already have 4 points on the board. I win. Does anyone have anything else to say? This is our one of our longest episodes. So. Yeah,
we started this as a way we were like, we got this good way to shorten our episodes, and now we're at almost
Johnny
3
had
hours.
15 minutes to the end of the
our
episode.
Longest episode.
No, I added a minute each to make a tagline.
You could have just gave it to me, and it would have been easy, you know.
Yeah, but Bobby wouldn't let me do that.
An actual creative use of the quantum leap premise.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't remember either pitch. I just wanted to not agree with Bobby and have an argument. So, to that extent, while neither of you had enough Scott Bakula, I do like Joe's premise of the singular quantum leap. Makes sense to me because that's how the episodes were.
It's a movie,
I do think for a movie, I do think it should have more. I at the end of the day, I concede to Bobby, and he chose Joe. But
the host should make the final call.
Oh, yeah, because that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah, but neither of you did Scott Bakula, so I can't.
I'm just ending the episode. 10, 9, 8, 7.